Well, good morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Gonzalez. McCann.
Present.
Donovan.
Here.
Montgomery Stepp is absent. Goebel.
Here.
Leyva Gonzalez.
Here.
Dillard.
Here.
Gastel.
Here.
Bush.
Here.
Frank.
Here.
Moreno.
Present.
Elo Rivera.
Present.
Gloria is absent. Whitburn.
Here.
Paul.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We have a packed agenda today. We have a packed room and a packed agenda. I will try to get us through it efficiently. Since we have many items, we have many opportunities for public comment today, but we will need to limit comments to 1 minute throughout today's meeting. So let's begin with non-agenda public comment. This provides 1 minute for anyone who would like to comment on something that is not on today's agenda, but is within the purview of MTS. Clerk, do we have any non-agenda public comment?
We do. We have 5. Robert Oliver, please make your way to the podium.
Good morning. My name is Robert Oliver. I live in National City. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address this board. I would like to address the issue of loud music on the trolleys. I ride the trolleys all the time for work in the San Diego area. I have to text MTS security just about every week for a time for loud music, sometimes including open vulgarity. These incidents are far too often for me. There is a penal code addressing these incidents. I don't know if the public is being adequately informed of the law, as well as being impressed of the lack of respect the offenders have for other passengers. One thing that can be done immediately is to have public announcements often on the trolley and at stations as follows. MTS wants all our passengers to know that loud music or any loud media at any time is not permitted under the penal code. Violators are subject to fines and/or imprisonment. Please use your earbuds. Please use your headphones. Please respect your fellow passengers. Thank you. And I thank you.
Next is Jamie Luna Reynoso. Please make your way to the podium.
Good morning. Buenos dias. Hauka. My name is Janice Luna Reynoso. I live in National City and am Executive Director of Mundo Gardens, a community-based organization, environmental justice and social justice. I'm here to invite you all to Destination Joy. We are in partnership with MTS through a Far South Border North grant with Urban Collaborative Project, and the event will be August 3rd and 4th throughout different locations at the different trolley stops from San Isidro to Chula Vista to National City 24th Street Trolley Station, where we will be, and the Euclid Southeast San Diego Trolley Station. Please join us. And also, we are encouraging more participation and partnership with MTS at the different trolley stops to exhibit the vibrant culture in our communities as a healing component, and also more arts program to mitigate any of the issues that you'll be hearing more about from our partners today. Thank you very much, and hope to see you August 3rd and 4th at our different trolley stops at Destination Joy online. You can visit us there, find out more, and you'll be getting some invitations from us as well. Thank you.
Next is Ryan Johnson. Ryan, please make your way to the podium.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Johnson. I go by RJ. I'm with the Vision Culture Foundation, which is a nonprofit out of National City. Same as my colleague Janice just mentioned, we wanted to invite you guys to that event on the 3rd and 4th and let you guys know that it's a really cool opportunity to see some amazing art from local artists, and a lot of community-based organizations are putting a lot of effort into it. So we just wanted to let you guys know. Also, I wanted to briefly, I'm sorry there's no context really, I'm just kind of coming up here out of nowhere, but wanted to talk to you guys also about the 24th Street station and the graffiti issue that we have there. We do a lot of art therapy. We work with the community. We work with high schools. We work with a lot of local artists, and we put forth a mural proposal basically to National City, the city manager, and the vice mayor and stuff like that. And we just wanted to let you guys know that if you have a chance to look that over, we'd love to help with that issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next is Ben Martinez. Ben, please make your way to the podium.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ben Martinez. I'm the city manager of National City. Yeah, I just wanted to add on to the comments. Exciting organizations that we have in our city, one that I didn't even know of until today. It's amazing when you make these new connections. Our part of this puzzle is, a lot of public cost, aggravation, so forth around the 24th Street. We have some high walls there that, right now it's a lot of graffiti, not a positive image. So we'd like to work with MTS because you're part of that puzzle. We pay fees and other things each time we want to abate graffiti. And we want to work with organizations like you've heard from today to come up with a more permanent solution rather than just removing it and creating another canvas, which gets tagged again. So we're open to that. A lot of good things happening in Chula Vista, the resort. I'm sure that developer, Mr. Mayor,
Thank you.
would like to see a positive image. So we're all about that. Thank you very much.
Okay. The next person is Alex Wong. Alex, please unmute yourself now.
News has just released 25 funding, and with it, MTS must make good on its promise to increase trolley frequencies as soon as possible. 30-minute frequencies are unusable for many late-night shift workers. 30-minute trolley frequencies means they could miss their connecting bus home and be stranded at a transit stop for the night. 15-minute late-night frequencies will fix that. It will ensure that anyone who begins or ends their shifts during late nights or Sunday mornings anywhere on the trolley system will enjoy a basic level of service. It's also incumbent on MTS to deliver 7.5-minute mid-coast trolley frequencies by June 2025. As University City steadily densifies, mid-coast trolley ridership will continue to rapidly grow for many years. Doubling frequencies will not only shorten trips and alleviate overcrowding, it will also help passengers feel safer because it reduces the time passengers spend waiting at stations and because most crimes on the trolley system happen at stations rather than on board the trolleys themselves.
Next is phone number ending in 2899. Please unmute yourself now.
Hi, Mary Davis here, government watchdog and steward, cross-pollinating information from the Board of Supervisors, where Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer proposed litigation against social media companies targeting youth. And I'm concerned about MTS as a prime example. I think we should start with ourselves first with government, where you specifically target youth, both in advertising as well as promoting them to post and share information on Instagram and TikTok. I'm concerned about human trafficking and the role that social media and public transit play. And I will be asking the district attorney as well as law enforcement to start tracking this in their runaway juvenile at-risk missing and human trafficking reports, since we are fine with a data-driven approach. Also, I'm concerned about ableism. I was shocked to find out you only offer audio, considering you have a robust video surveillance system on your network. Using audio only for your meetings is like the Pony Express. Please get into the 21st century. Also, your audio quality is...
Next is phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Hey, it's Rashawn, the champion of public transit. No more hypocritical, flippant temper tantrums upon staff, please. Now, GoVolt remembers a non-existent option of tapping for a trolley ride on the doors. More evidence that people approving things don't actually ride. For AEDs on buses, how about naloxone too, especially for transit security? Alonzo, you thought a $25 fine wasn't onerous, but that's because you're making government bank and stipends with phone, travel, and mileage reimbursements, and you're in real estate. You're the opposite of those that generally ride public transit. Now, question, is it okay for someone to stand on MTS bus benches or to block the path of people waiting for a bus? Because on the news, I saw Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer doing just those actions. He was standing and almost fell on the 9 bus bench in front of the Bay Apartments in Pacific Beach. This is on video, so is there any way MTS can have her charged with obstruction or something? She actually has a criminal record going back to 2003, so it should be easy to at least make her pay a fine. I support those fines. But the MTS minute is very inequitable and unreasonably against the Brown Act. Thank you for 60 seconds.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Chair Whitburn, if I could, Director Montez is in the audience here. If he could connect up with the city manager, Martinez, about 24th Street, please. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for the public comments this morning. Well, let's move on to our consent items, which are items 3.
Oh, Chair.
Yes.
I just real quick wanted to thank the folks, our city manager, RJ and Janice, for coming out from the community. So I think there's nothing specific proposed at this point, but I think this is an opportunity for a pilot project program or something. The graffiti issues, 24th Street is where it's one of the most challenging and a lot of wasted resources on all ends. And so I think this real project is really exciting, and I think it could be a replica for, I'm sure that other stations are having the same issues. So nothing specific proposed, but just something to keep an eye on. And I appreciate Sharon for connecting our staff. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Bush. All right, let's move on to our consent items, which are items 3 through 24. Clerk, is there any public comment on the consent items?
We do. Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Item 1, when the minutes refer to my item 21 comments, it's inaccurate. I don't care what the copper line design looks like. I'm in opposition to its entire existence. I pointed out illegalities, omissions, and offered alternatives. Big difference. Item 7, I support $6 million for 260 bus shelters. If any are in areas like Gillespie, they need wind shields. Bus shelters need rain shielding for the winter. Item 9, $361,000 to fix the PRONTO system that should have gone through system checks before being implemented. Item 12, selling 5 total mini buses to France-based transit seems like a conflict of interest. Item 13, $1.1 million for legal services covers Vivian's great point about not wasting MTS staff time in court over fare citations. Item 15, $197,000 for customer surveys. If MTS can skip required 12-month trial periods for major system changes, then I don't see why a survey couldn't be skipped too. Item 17, the $645,000 admit this is not an El Cajon Transit Center new platform modification. This is modification for a predetermined copper line at a station that is unacceptably dark at night without proper
Your time has
lighting. No wonder
expired.
someone.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
All right, thank you, Clerk. Is there a motion to approve the consent items? We'll start with Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'm happy to move the consent agenda, but I just have comments on a couple of items. Certainly won't be pulling any items, but wanted to make comments on item number 5, disadvantaged business entity overall goal. I want to thank Samantha, Leslie, and team for briefing my office on this item and appreciate how receptive Samantha was to some of the feedback that was provided in that meeting. I also want to reiterate my desire to continue working with staff on this program and ensure that we go beyond the target goals in categories where the NICS code had the highest DBE representation. I won't go into that too much, although I have a desire to, but I'll just leave it there. I think we have to leverage that opportunity. So I'll be reaching out offline to continue that discussion. Also want to acknowledge that I'm happy to see actions related to the orange line improvement and the grade separation study in items 8, 10, and 19. Again, I want to acknowledge how long communities that are served along the southeastern San Diego and East County portions of the orange line have been looking forward to these projects. And so I'm excited to see the progress. And with that, again, I'll move the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp. Director Marino.
Happy to second the motion on the floor, and I have comments on item 16 on the consent agenda. Item 16 is the Transit Operations Insources Feasibility Study Contract Award, and this will authorize the use of $624,046 to help evaluate the feasibility and sustainability of converting MTS's current fixed route and paratransit privatized services contract to be operated directly in-house by MTS employees. I'm very happy this is moving forward, as this is something that we have, or I have been advocating for quite some time. The completion of this study, I believe, is vital because we could potentially be outsourcing work that our in-house crews can be doing, and it could probably cost us less. So I'm looking forward to see the results of these evaluations, and I thank staff for moving this forward. And as I mentioned, happy to second the motion on the floor.
Thank you very much, Director Moreno. We have a motion from Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp. We have a second from Director Moreno. Clerk, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote on this.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
McCann,
Aye.
Donovan,
Yes.
Montgomery Stepp,
Yes.
Goebel,
Yes.
Leyba Gonzalez,
Yes.
Gillard,
Yes.
Gastel,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Moreno,
Moreno, yes.
Elo Rivera,
Yes.
Gloria is absent. Whitburn,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously with one member absent.
Thank you, Clerk. That brings us to our discussion items, beginning with item number 25, and that is the Imperial Avenue Terminal Transit-Oriented Development Project. We're going to get our presentation this morning from Karen Landers. And once you get settled in and ready to present the item, please feel free to begin.
Good morning. I'm going to introduce this item and then I'm going to turn it over to our partners at the San Diego Foundation to give you an update on this. But I just wanted to introduce this item to the board. This relates to the transit-oriented development project that we are pursuing at the two what we call triangle parcels that are just right downstairs next to our headquarters on National Avenue. And just to remind the board, we had previously sought a TOD partner in this back in 2019, where we went out with a competitive process and we really received no interest in that parcel. We all had thought that this was a really great, unique opportunity because it's right next door to MTS's largest and busiest transit center that has all three of our trolley lines that meet at it and several bus lines. But it's right here in downtown next to Petco Park. But it's a complicated property and there's a lot that needs to go into it to make it developable. So we had been regrouping, figuring out what we needed to do to bring in professional help or start over again. And at that same time, back in 2023, we happened to have some meetings with the San Diego Foundation that had created the San Diego Housing Impact Fund and was really looking at what could they do to bring their resources and expertise to help address our regional, housing needs. And so that turned into this collaboration that we have with the foundation. The board approved an exclusive negotiating agreement with the foundation that then turned into a collaboration agreement that we signed in June of 2023. And that agreement basically said that we were going to negotiate with the foundation of a proposed project at that site. But the process that's a little unique here is that they were going to go out and seek a lead developer that they would put together a project with. And so in that process, we set up a due diligence process that the foundation would go through at their cost and a developer selection kind of competition process. And then they ultimately, the goal is that they will put together a proposal that will come back to this board for a disposition and development agreement for a long-term ground lease and development at that site. So what we're here today is the foundation over the last year, because that collaboration agreement was executed in June of 2023. They're going to give you a report on all the due diligence that they've done, the conclusions that they've come to of what the ideal or most feasible project really is at this site. And they have selected a lead developer that they're prepared to start negotiations with, kind of next level. And the hope would be to bring back that DDA to the board for actual approval. Hopefully November, December is what we're targeting. And today we just wanted to get the board's feedback and have you authorize the CEO to proceed with those negotiations with the foundation and their lead developer, because we don't want to waste anybody's time if this is not a concept that the board, is excited about. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole White-Forrest from the foundation and also Michael Cowan from KPMG. And then I'll come back and wrap it up. You want to?
Hello, everyone. Nicole White Forest from San Diego Foundation. Just to review the vision for the site, which everyone really rallied around over the last year. It's to create as much as possible affordability on this site, addressing our critical need for accessible housing in the city of San Diego, but also supporting that with full spectrum of housing opportunities from affordable to workforce housing and to the extent possible market rate. Beyond it, above and beyond that, we know that we need to meet that 15% threshold of affordability with the disposition of land, although this will be a long-term ground lease. We want to make sure that whatever we propose and are pursuing is commercially and financially feasible. So not just having a grand plan for density for the site, but something that we can really execute on as quickly and as efficiently as possible to get people and apartments and living and thriving in this area. Promote sustainability. So another branch of the San Diego Foundation has been working diligently with MTS, was able to secure the grant for the work for the transit center or the funding for the transit center redesign. So working on that element as well. Incorporating ground floor activation so that we can have as many eyes on the street as possible and not just parking, and to bring in some critical services and needs with particularly our nonprofit partners. And then as Karen already mentioned, deploying some of our concessionary capital to really make this possible where current market conditions alone would not make it feasible. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael Cowan from KPMG. He's going to walk through the process over the last year to show how we have arrived to the point of having a great proposal with a terrific developer. And then we will go into the actual proposal.
I'm good. Good morning. Good to see many of you again. Thanks for allowing us the opportunity to talk about this exciting project. Karen Landers has done a very nice job giving you an overview, particularly about some of the collaboration and other agreements that have been structured between San Diego MTS and between San Diego Foundation in the development of this project. A couple of highlights that I wanted to raise as part of the work that KPMG and others have been doing with the foundation. We've gone out and sought interest from the markets. So we're looking at market rate and affordable housing developers and really understanding their perspective on what is the development potential for this particular site, the timing associated with that, the scale of the projects. So we've conducted in 2 instances what we refer to as a market sounding process to encourage developers to give us their opinions. At the bottom of the sheet, you'll see that we had done some detailed analysis and an RFQ development to go out and solicit developer interest. That in fact was informed by that market sounding that was conducted in mid-2023. And then again, won't kill you with a ton of details here, but there has been some other significant events that have occurred. We had a closed session to discuss ground lease terms that could be agreeable to both the foundation, to its developer partner, as well as to MTS, and that was in November of last year. As a result of all those activities, the foundation issued a RFQ document soliciting, again, expressions of interest and qualifications for the project's development. We reached out to about 40 different groups in order to get that RFQ very well spread across the county and across different development teams. We received 12 expressions of interest to begin with, and ultimately through this process and the evaluation of the site, its characteristics, its development potential, we landed on 2 RFQ responses, one from Cypress Equity Investments and the second from Forge Development Partners. As a result of those bids, the statements of qualifications, the foundation went through a process to evaluate the bids and to evaluate and then ultimately award. Cypress Equity Investments is the developer that was chosen to serve in that lead role with the foundation. That selection by San Diego Foundation enables them to develop a proposal in conjunction with Cypress, and that proposal will ultimately be brought back to this board, I believe at the beginning of 2025, in order for this board to consider and ultimately approve what would be a development and disposition agreement and a long-term ground lease. I apologize, I've got one more. I think it's important for this board to understand that the 12th and Imperial site itself, it is an imperfect development site. And I state that for a number of different reasons, which we've included on the screen. And I think one of the important things to understand is that, costs and financing and, the site's characteristics create challenges. But through the collaboration between San Diego MTS's management, staff, board, the San Diego Foundation, and other partners, the foundation's made a very significant financial and resource investment in getting this project off the ground. Several $1 million worth of investment to be factual. It is that collaboration and that investment which has gotten us to a point in 2024 in which we have a potential project that is financially feasible with a lead developer partner, Cypress Equity Investments. And I wanted to thank the management and the team from MTS for helping to get us to this point.
We'll just go through a little bit. We all know some of the dynamics in this site that are particularly unique to this development opportunity. It requires site assemblage and a utility relocation. There are major gas lines and electric lines that are running through the streets that are running through the site. Obviously, we have to integrate with the transit center, which will be an excellent TOD basis, but also adds additional complications. If we were to go high density, so I know originally a lot of people discussed 20 stories, 40 stories, that presents additional costs with type 1 construction, which is then exacerbated with any PLA or prevailing wage requirements that we have on the site, which are estimated typically of kind of 20 to 30% premium override. There are some challenges in terms of neighborhood dynamics to really get market rate, quote unquote, housing. So we had many discussions with traditional market developers who have already made significant investments in the neighborhood and talking about rent levels at this area. So trying to push above that 120% to balance out the cost of affordable housing is challenging here. And then, of course, the capital markets environment from pre-development financing, which the foundation has already invested significant capital in, all the way through construction with the current interest rate environment. So all of this is to say, it's a little bit messy and not as straightforward as could be, but we have a path to getting the density that we want and having the mix of incomes that we have in a reasonable fashion. So I, again, give a lot of credit to the MTS team and to our other team at KPMG to help us really get there. So the basis for selecting Cypress Equities as the lead developer, and we do say lead because if we are trying to deliver 400, 500 units on this site, it really means that we are probably delivering this in two different parts. So the first part being Cypress Equities, which is proposing 100% affordable project. They are flexible. They have a great office with people in LA and Orange County, have been looking for investment opportunities here in San Diego and really are committed to establishing a presence here in our city. So they're bringing wonderful expertise from both the market rate side and some experience with the affordable side to our area, well-resourced. So they have the financial capacity for this to really complement the resources that we're bringing and any other party might bring to the site. And of course, they substantially exceed the minimum requirements in terms of the prevailing wages and affordability as well. Let's go into this specific project. So again, 100% affordable. Their section would be roughly the area in blue, which we're calling the North Project, which would then leave a residual site that's almost L-shaped around it, which could be the future South Project. It's not just South, but the L-shape there. The North Project that Cypress is proposing is approximately 160 units, and that's approximately 280 bedrooms. So they are larger-ish units that could include some family units. These aren't just all micro units, as we're seeing a lot in the market, for households earning between 40 and 80% AMI. Average unit size, 800 to 850 square feet of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, and an anticipated time schedule of delivering for occupancy by the end of 2027. They are moving aggressively. They can move as quickly as we can for this. this. That is in terms of in partnership with the transit center development and design as well. And we've been working very closely with not just Karen and Sean and their group, but also Heather and engineering to make sure that we can work in tandem to design something that really is a great complement to each other. The South project has the potential of being 200 to 400 units. So this one we are anticipating would be a mix of a moderate income, so roughly 80%, 100%, possibly 120% AMI. So we're now getting the range from that 40 to 120%, and the total project size on the both sites being between about 350 units and closer to that 500, 550 number. It's not so vertical as we originally had anticipated, mostly because we want to keep from that type 1 construction, which just was not financially feasible. So spread out a little bit more over the site and requiring a little bit more integration into the transit center, but still with good ground floor activation use. Here's just a little bit of details. Again, these are very conceptual at this point, but the idea from Cypress, it's just a little bit of a stacking plan, and you can see a typical floor plate as well. The proposed benefits of this are obviously the immediacy of it, ready to go now, not waiting for market conditions to change or to improve. This is something that we believe can be executed on immediately. It has the density that we all have targeted, an income mix that we have been goal seeking for, exceeds substantially the minimum affordability requirements that we need. It harmonizes with the transit center and is a great team that can work flexibly with MTS as we have in thus far.
I'm going to step in and just talk about kind of the next step. So where we are is they've developed these preliminary concepts, and we're ready to kind of dive in and do a little bit more substantial negotiation with the foundation and Cypress. And so before we did that, we wanted to make sure that this was on the path that the board was looking forward, to at this site. So if they approve that, then what would happen next is that we would continue to collaborate on integrating and harmonizing our transit center expansion project with the TOD. So we don't get those two designed in a silo and then realize later on that there's conflicts. One of the items that the board approved today on the consent calendar was item number 11 to hire Dawkin to do those transit center designs. And we wanted to get them on board so that they could be part of this process as we refine the TOD site plan, that it does not conflict with or impact our transit center project. So then we would put together and negotiate that development proposal that would come back to the board. The foundation on their side would be then negotiating a joint venture agreement with Cypress Equity, which would kind of set the terms of their involvement and their participation financially as well. And then we would enter or propose a disposition and development agreement between that joint venture and MTS that we would bring back to the board. And again, I think we're targeting somewhere between November and January is our hope for that. And then as part of the DDA, we would have the material terms of any future ground lease. And then as the project develops and you get financing, and lenders come in, one of the things that the board generally approves for us in those DDA is that then we can negotiate those other more typical terms with the lenders that are necessary at the final stages of a project in the ground lease. And then concurrently with that, we would continue working with the San Diego Foundation to refine the scope of that South project and seeking a development partner. One of the things that it has to come a little bit separately is, as you showed, it was that L shape over our expanded transit center project. So we would be constructing our transit center project, and then that would be on a podium above the transit center. But we would hope to concurrently or a little bit after, bringing you a DDA on the North project, be able to be then soon bringing you a DDA on the South project. And then the very last. So today's recommendation is that the board authorize the CEO to proceed with those negotiations with the foundation and its lead developer. And then also just to make a finding that those negotiations are not subject to CEQA, which we have confirmed with our environmental counsel. And with that, we're open for any questions.
Very good. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
The San Diego Foundation, in collusion with big developers, Cypress Equity Investments, and failing public transiteer, MTS, to build Sagapax near 12th Imperial, the area where gunshots are an occasional occurrence. That's the messy, imperfect development and dynamic neighborhood, all right, with pretty loud trolley sounds all day and night, pretty loud human sounds, and pretty visually loud human sights, too. The champion of political labor agreements and ordinances will ensure very high wages and costs to MTS. The 200 to 400 workforce and market rate units, that's a huge discrepancy in numbers. Transit center expansion, what does that even mean? North project is 160 box units alleged to be somewhat affordable. Good, there's more than one bedroom options with needed open space and businesses at the bottom, but not very unique designs kind of everywhere. Strange that the south project could be developed by a different developer. Would that mean the other building would look drastically different? And waiting for a better market is no guarantee of future construction. Probably the taxpayers are going to foot the bill for the alleged affordable units as always. I also expect future graffiti damage and people moving if the homelessness and drug use issues aren't addressed. Also, who gets the RENA numbers?
Time
That's
has
very
expired.
important.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you very much, Clerk. We will open board discussion on this item. And we'll begin with Director Dillard.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have two questions. One was, do we have an approximate sales price that range? And if so, what would be the approximate cost per square footage for a unit?
So, I mean, certainly if Nicole wants to chime in, but we don't have any of those details, yet, because that would be part of the next phase of the negotiations. But this project would be 100% affordable, which then establishes the rental rate at the 40 to 80% of the average median income. So the rental rates for each unit would be established based on those rates, like of what those percentages are in the community. So it's typical of any other severely affordable projects, I guess.
Yeah. And just to clarify a couple of other things, so it is rental, not for sale here.
Oh, okay, so it's rentals.
And then, yes, the range is usually, so if you say 40% of area median income, then it depends on the household size. So there's a different median income based on one person household, two person, three person, and then it's approximately 30% minus utilities is what the rent kind of threshold is. So it's a whole matrix before development.
Okay, that makes sense. And then you mentioned a community childcare center or community participation. How would that work?
So there are not guaranteed tenants yet. The vision is that there is reserved ground floor space where we could bring in various nonprofits or for-profits that provide services that are needed. And one of the things that we've heard a lot through our market sounding is the need for childcare. And we have some existing partners with foundations, so we would love to be able to attract someone who would be able to service not only the building, but the community.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Dillard. Director Elo Rivera.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for all the work on this. Appreciate it. The first question is really kind of in the weeds, but I am curious. This property, MTS properties over here have been prone to flooding, and I'm curious to what extent we're taking into account the need to protect against that, mitigate flooding into the costs and the plans for this.
So I guess I would start that the transit center project that we have, one of the features of that project is to try to alleviate the regular flooding that we get when it rains,
Yep.
So part of that design is to create some sort of detention basins or things that would help both at the bus bays and the trolley tracks on those days. We're not confident that that would necessarily solve the problems like we had on January 22nd of a flood of that scale. Though certainly whatever could be incorporated into that project. And then ultimately the engineering and design of this housing project would have to take into consideration, what is necessary to protect that building itself.
And all of the developers that we've spoken to, including Cypress, are well aware of the flooding issue. Most of the housing units, especially South Project, would be above, so raised. And it would really be more the retail that we'd have to worry about in terms of those outlier scenarios that we're planning for.
Got it. I assume there'd be partnership with the city to incorporate plans that the city has for flood prevention, stormwater and investments, things of that nature, so that there's alignment between what happens on this side and what the city's planning for?
Certainly, I mean, all of our TOD projects go through the city permitting process. You know, so the projects themselves would meet the city code requirements. We haven't yet had that next level discussion with the city of if there's something new and special that would be needed at this location. Again, as part of our transit center expansion project, whatever we can do as part of that project to alleviate the storm, flooding conditions down here, we're hoping to do, because that really affects transit and our employees and our patrons.
For sure, yeah. I think less from a permitting perspective and more just ensuring that there's a kind of thoughtful and strategic incorporation of what plans the city has. I would love to say that that will be flagged for you when you go through the DSD process. I won't say that though, because I'm not 100% confident that that would happen. So I would encourage you all to reach out to the city to specifically ask those questions. And there's, as with many things related to stormwater, there's potential significant benefits that could be provided as well through partnering with the city. Green infrastructure, which is, more trees and a more kind of friendly environment. There'd be a lot of benefits to that here, in this part of the city. The second question, I noticed the reference to the PLA. So the 20 to 30%, I know that is an industry standard that is applied. I also know that typically is added on prior to having conversations with the building trades about what it would actually cost. And we've had at least one project where a developer said it would not pencil because they'd added that 20 to 30%. Turned out they had not talked to the building trades yet and did pencil after all, because the trades were just as invested in having the project built as the investor was. They wanted work for their members. So I'm curious if any of the developers have standing relationships with the building trades, or if the building trades have been incorporated in these conversations at all at this point. Are they a engaged stakeholder at this point?
I'll take that one. So during our market sounding, we spoke to quite a few developers that had in-depth conversations, real-time conversations with building trades, not only about this site and potential development, but other comparable developments in the city of San Diego and in similar kind of downtown neighborhoods. I think universally, most people were wanting to add that 20 to 30% even after those conversations. The way I view it is that once we get into more refined design, as we get cost savings, that gives us more flexibility in terms of execution and hopefully affordability and financing. So we always are looking for cost savings and working together in partnership. But from a risk management perspective, we need to underwrite the more conservative assumptions, because they have proven out in many cases to be the real costs.
Understood. Again, to the extent that they can be made meaningful partners that are at the table on the front end, they want work for their members, and they have, which means they have a very, very significant interest in seeing these projects pencil out and actually shovels hit the ground.
And we see that as absolutely a lot of alignment. It isn't, I don't think, a contentious issue putting in that premium at all, because we all want the same thing at the end of the day. And of course, we want to provide living wages as much as possible to the people, so we aren't exacerbating the problem. So absolutely, I think one of the early stages, once we get beyond this, is bringing on potential partners.
Got it. And then the last, and this is less of a question, more just a recommendation. I appreciate the mix of bedrooms. The 2 and 3 bedrooms are super, super valuable, those 3 bedrooms in particular. I would encourage us to be as focused on, we get into like kind of these sterile numerical ways of talking about how much housing will be produced. As we say time and time again, housing is about people, and we should be thinking about how many people can live in these homes. The mix of bedrooms, the units, to me are far less important than the amount of human beings who will actually be able to comfortably and live in these homes with dignity. I'm very curious to see what these projects look like from that perspective. not just, unit count and bedroom count. The bedroom count helps, but, and the last thing to that point, when we eventually get to a point of talking about cost per home, including the kind of cost per bedroom or cost per person, I think is incredibly important. That has been lost in some of the more recent conversations in discussing housing costs in San Diego as housing is being built. Building 2 and 3 bedroom homes is not the same thing as building a studio in terms of the amount of people who will be able to live there, and they should not be analyzed in the same way in terms of cost. So just as kind of a suggestion on that point. Thank you, Chair. I very much appreciate the work on this and the presentation.
And if I could just respond to that in one way, I totally agree. That's, again, one apartment is not the same, because it could be a studio, it could be a 1 bedroom, it could be a 3 bedroom. So that's why we started adding in the bedroom counts. We, in some of our prior TOD related presentations to the board, had added occupancy, but then we discovered that there are widely different occupancy formulas, so like you could get a range where, some say it's 1.5 persons per bedroom, some say it's 2 per bedroom plus 1 for the common room. And so we weren't sure how reliable or consistent that number was. And so that's why right now we've been presenting bedrooms, because that seems like the most consistent feature. But we can also look into, is there a commonly accepted occupancy formula? But that's why we haven't been putting it, because we used one number in one report, and then we found that the federal government uses a different one, and we weren't sure which one to use, and we didn't want to be basically putting our hand on the scale to make it look like we were doing more successful, and then the actual occupancy would be widely different because it didn't reach those maximums.
Thank you, Director Ela Rivera. Well, I will also say how much I appreciate the presentation and the work on this. As we all know, one of the biggest struggles that San Diegans have is with the cost of living, and in particular, the cost of housing. And not only individuals struggling with housing themselves, but we hear from so many parents and grandparents who are concerned that their children and grandchildren won't be able to continue to live in the city in which they grew up. So adding to the stock of affordable housing is key to that. And certainly transit-oriented development adds the benefit of helping people get around, and it's good for the environment. So there's so much to be said for this. So I want to thank MTS staff for all of your consistent efforts to develop transit-oriented development. I thank my colleagues for making it a priority for this agency, and I really want to thank the San Diego Foundation for stepping in and helping to make a difficult, potentially, project pencil. So really appreciate your assistance with that. We do need a motion for this, so I'll go ahead and move the staff recommendation, and Director Dillard has offered a second. Seeing no further comments from the board, clerk, please call the roll.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
McCann. Donovan,
Yes.
Montgomery Stepp,
Yes.
Goble,
Yes.
Leyva Gonzalez,
Yes.
Dillard,
Yes.
Gastel,
Aye.
Bush,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Moreno,
Moreno, yes.
Elo Rivera,
Yes.
Gloria is absent. Whitburn,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously with 1 member absent.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for the presentation and all the work on this. We move on to item 26, and that is a proposed trolley system change for the copper line. And we're going to invite Dennis Desmond and Brent Boyd to present this item. Please feel free to get settled in and begin your presentation once you're ready to do so.
Good morning, Dennis Desmond, Director of Planning. To my left is Brent Boyd, Manager for Service Quality for Rail. And I'd like to acknowledge Brian Riley, Chief Operating Officer of Rail, who's also with us this morning. Last month, we brought you a public hearing for a proposed change to our trolley system in the East County. As background, we have a single track segment in the East County in the city of Santee operating along Cuyamaca Avenue. Most of the rest of the system is double tracked. This one single track segment does cause a lot of reliability issues with the system. Once there are delays on this segment, it dominoes through the rest of the system, the orange line in East County, and then as the green line dovetails with the blue line on the Old Town Corridor segment. So what we're proposing to do is to terminate the green and orange lines at the El Cajon Transit Center and introduce a new line we're calling the Copper Line, operating between El Cajon and Santee as its own route. The Copper Line would serve 4 stations along that corridor. It would operate every 15 minutes a day, every 15 minutes for most of the day, 7 days a week. We would maintain the current span of service and operate 1 to 2 car consists depending on the demand that we see. The benefits spread throughout the system because of the reliability issues that single track segment causes. We're also adding Sunday service for East County, where we've got 30-minute service now. We'll be running 15-minute service on the green and then the new Copper lines. We anticipate operation savings of roughly $1 million due to some of the efficiencies that we'll see in East County. There are going to be some reduced travel times for traffic due to the shorter consists operating along Cuyamaca Street. We'll have better break times for trolley operators due to scheduling efficiencies. And then we're also going to add a break room facility at the El Cajon Transit Center for trolley personnel. So we did have public engagement with the riders of the system as well as residents out in East County. We had 5 different public outreach events earlier this year. We had over 100 comments submitted by riders and by the public, both in person, online, and on a survey. We've been coordinating actually for a couple of years with the cities of El Cajon and Santee on this. And then, as you're aware, we had a public hearing last month at the board meeting where individuals were able to come and participate in that way. The board commentary following that public hearing, especially concerns from Vice Chair Goebel and Councilmember Hall, surrounded safety and security issues with the proposal. So actually on July 2nd, several staff, including our Chief Operating Officer, Brian Riley, and our Director of Security, Tim Curran, and Brent and I met out at East County with Vice Chair Goebel, looking at the various measures that we could take to enhance safety and security. So some of those enhancements include signage that we will be installing, directing passengers to the north end to transfer between the orange and copper lines. We're going to enhance the look both ways signs at the rail crossings so pedestrians be sure to anticipate trains coming from both directions. And we'll supplement that with an advisory to trolley drivers to remind them to look for potential pedestrians making those transfers. We're also going to have ambassadors at the El Cajon Transit Center for the implementation to ensure that passengers understand the new transfer activity and help them safely transfer between routes. We will have a security officer at the El Cajon Transit Center on site at all times during service hours. And we're also going to keep the doors unlocked for the trolleys as they're sitting there during layovers at the El Cajon Transit Center so that people aren't waiting on the platform, but they can actually get into the trolley and sit in the air conditioning and off of the platform for enhanced feeling of security. We're also, as I mentioned, going to have a new break room for trolley operations, and we also have a new security room there at the El Cajon Transit Center as well. And then another thing that we're going to add that was a request from the board was flags at the Pronto validators to enhance their visibility to help people know where to tap their Pronto card. One last thing that we need to do as part of the major service change is to bring you a service equity analysis on this major service change. That's a requirement of FTA to comply with the guidance on Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. It's also in our Policy 42. That's a statistical analysis guided by FTA circular that evaluates the population affected by the major service change compared to the overall service population. So We can use either rider survey data, as one of the commenters had mentioned, or we can use census data. We typically use census data for a variety of reasons, and one of those is that it includes the affected populations that may not already be current riders. So they may be people out there that are affected by the major service change that aren't necessarily currently riding. So that is consistent with past analyses that we've done. So the service equity analysis found no disparate impact to minority populations or disproportionate burden to low-income populations. You might recall that there was an early draft of the service equity analysis that initially showed a disproportionate burden to low-income populations. There was a statistical error in that analysis, and that's why we pulled that from the June agenda and we brought it back to you today. So again, that's attached. It shows the maps with the census tracts and the populations affected compared to the service area population. So with that, our staff recommendation today is that we receive that, or the board receives that Title VI service equity analysis on the proposed major service change, and that we approve the implementation of the copper line as a permanent trolley route and waive the policy 42 12-month trial period that's in there as a typical pilot period for a new route. So that simply means we wouldn't have to bring it back to you again after 12 months for approval to continue the service. And I'll mention that if this is approved today, we hope to begin this this fall as early as the end of September. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Desmond. Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We do. Phone number ending in 2899. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, Mary Davis in opposition to this item. First of all, it fails to establish a baseline crime rate, which I feel like is important for statistical analysis. I continue to oppose the project also because of the regional inequity it voiced on East County. Your mitigation measures are inadequate. You need to be reinvesting far more of your savings into the community you're impacting instead of using those savings to shore up a transit system on life support, particularly in light of your enablement of missed revenue for fare evaders. Also, I absolutely object to your waiving policy 42. You are changing conditions tremendously, so your agency has a duty to thoughtfully analyze and evaluate the impacts your actions and then make those effects known via reporting back to the community in 1 year. Policies exist for a reason, and you're wanting to waive the 12-month trial and make it instantly permanent is an example of big government putting itself above the people it is supposed to serve. Thank you.
Next is Truth. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Thanks. I'm still opposed, but here's a Title VI mitigation measure. The copper line should be a free service with 24-hour security and restrooms at the El Cajon, Arnell, Gillespie, and Santee stations, since people will be waiting longer for their trips. Why was Sean the only one questioning East County to service and not Ron or Steve? The way Dennis referred to Santee as out there was also disrespectful. And he said people on the western part of the alignment are going to be the big beneficiaries. So that means everybody east are the losers. Inequity. A 10-minute improvement in speed is nothing. Is that 10-minute weight being thrown onto copper line users? Saving $1 million doesn't hold water when MTS is getting $138 million from SB 125. Adding signs, lights, security, updating all MTS info, and getting another trolley operator would all cost way more than $1 million. The survey showed almost everyone in East County opposes the copper line. They spoke about congestion in El Cajon, confusion, lacking security, dangerous tracks, and trolley times not being synced. Many in other areas thought this copper line was going to extend trolley service to Lakeside, or were hoping for service until midnight. No trial study, just deception on a trolley of lies and inequity. No to this copper line.
Your time has expired. That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. Let's open board discussion on this item, and we'll begin our conversation with Vice Chair Goebel.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dennis, Brent, Brian, Tim. I don't know where Tim's buried back there somewhere, but there we are. Thank you for taking the time to meet on July 2nd. Thank you for taking the time to address our concerns out of the East County. Certainly, this is a benefit to the whole system. But as a couple of callers have mentioned, we want to make sure that additional costs are not imposed upon East County. I don't think they are. I think what you've done is exceeded, as I requested, exceeded federal and state guidelines for safety. And what it means is the ambassadors are a key part of that. The signage as you get off of each trolley door pointing people which way to go to safely cross the orange line track is a good thing. Having more activity because it's the termination of the orange and the green lines, just the number of riders, the operators and security who will be there, there's just going to be an increased presence on the platform. And I think that's good for the safety of those who need to wait for a transfer. I think a transfer time of 4 to 9 minutes is not unreasonable to ask. I think it goes by very quickly. To tell you the truth, I just got back from the Bay Area. I took transit many times this past weekend up there. 4 minutes goes by very fast, especially if you have luggage. I read both the public comments, over 100 of them. I read them each. I read the Title VI protest. I read the staff's analysis of Title VI. I find the staff analysis to be fair, and it appears to show there's no disparate adverse impact. So for these reasons, and more, I'm supportive of this line as a improvement to the entire system. I think I also heard flexibility from Mr. Riley saying, hey, if we need to do a little bit more or tweak anything to address any safety or operational concerns, we will. So I'm glad for that openness. So I'll be glad to move the staff recommendation, and thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Goebel. Let's continue our conversation with Director Hall.
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation. Seeing no further conversation, clerk, please call the roll.
Gonzalez,
Aye. Aye.
Donovan,
Yes.
Montgomery Steppe,
Yes.
Goebel. Yes. Leyba Gonzalez,
Yes.
Dillard,
Yes.
Gastel,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Moreno,
Moreno, yes.
Hilo Rivera.
Yes.
Gloria is absent. Whitburn,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously with one member absent.
Thank you. Item 27 is a Title VI monitoring report for service policies, and Dennis Desmond is going to stay up there along with Samantha Leslie and provide this presentation. Please proceed whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I'm joined today by Samantha Leslie on my left here. She's our staff attorney and our civil rights officer. Today we're bringing you a monitoring report on our Title VI service policies. Back at the March board meeting, we brought you these policies and took a number of comments and took those into account. And what we're doing today is talking about a monitoring report of these policies. These policies are a requirement for us to comply, similar to the service equity analysis on major service changes. The FTA circular on Title VI compliance requires 2 administrative policies, a vehicle assignment policy and a distribution of transit amenities policy. We're also required to monitor these policies every 3 years and bring this monitoring report to you for approval. The policies and the monitoring report are presented to FTA every 3 years as part of our Title VI program update. We just submitted one in May of this year. So the next submittal will be in May of 2027. And when we brought these policies to you in March, there was board interest in further analysis and amendment of these policies, and I'll talk about that some more. So the vehicle assignment policy talks about how we assign different types of vehicles, the buses and the light rail vehicles. So there's a description of the bus types, the amenities by the different types of buses, how they're assigned both on routes and how they're assigned by division. Our ADA paratransit vehicle assignments for our MTS access fleet. And we also include a discussion of our zero emission buses, and there is a current fleet listing as of the policy effective date. Similar on the light rail side, we have less variety of vehicles on the light rail side, but there's a description of the different light rail types, the low floors, the high floors, et cetera. A chart of amenities by the different light rail type, how they're assigned by line, as well as some discussion of our vintage light rail fleet. And then again, like the bus side, a fleet listing of all of the light rail cars in our fleet. To take a step aside for a second, just to talk about some current vehicle initiatives. We're receiving this summer a new fixed route minibus fleet that'll be put into service later this year. We're implementing our ZEB transition plan. I believe there's an item on your agenda today to hear a little bit more about an update for that. And ZEBs will be included with our heavy duty bus orders from here going forward. We've got electric charging infrastructure projects underway at our MTS divisions. Phase 1 of the South Bay division was completed last year as part of the Iris Rapid project. Imperial Avenue division is beginning the work right now for phase 1, and then we're in development for the other 2 heavy duty divisions at East County and Kearney Mesa. We're also working on our Clean Transit Advancement Campus, which is a big part of our ZEB transition plan. 3 of the 5 parcels for that project have been purchased. We have 2 more that will be acquired within the next year, and we're anticipating opening that project by 2029. And I'll spend a little bit more time with the transit amenities policy because this is really where the discussion centered around during the March board meeting. Transit amenities policy goes over how we distribute various types of amenities that we offer: seating, shelters, information displays, both static and electronic, elevators and escalators at our stations and bus stops, trash and recycling receptacles that we provide, restrooms, ticket vending machines, and fare validators. In terms of our amenities at trolley stations, they are fairly standardized throughout the system. Every station has shelters and benches, ticket vending machines, et cetera. We have elevators only at a few stations where those are needed to supplement or where a ramp isn't possible. We only have escalators at one station, that's SDSU, and then we have restrooms available at selected stations around our system. The bus stop amenities vary a little bit more. We have over 4,000 bus stops in our system. Amenities have, according to the policy, been prioritized by ridership, and we use the number of boardings. In 2021, the last major revision of the policy, distribution of transit amenities policy, we did add an equity component so that we could consider how we can get more shelters and benches into disadvantaged communities. So that's been in the policy since 2021. We have an MOU with some of our jurisdictions to add shelters and benches, other jurisdictions to prefer to install and maintain their own. So that's something to consider as we look at where we have and don't have amenities. There are also many places where shelters and benches have been installed by organizations or agencies other than MTS. So business improvement districts, again, some cities do their own. Developers in some cases are required to add them, or homeowners associations, et cetera, have added them. And in some cases, even private citizens put benches out there for a bus stop that's near their home. Infrastructure in a lot of places is unable to accommodate our furniture. In most cases, it's because the sidewalks are too narrow. We need a minimum width to comply with accessibility guidelines, both Title 24 at the state level and ADA at the federal level. And so if the sidewalk or the area that we have just isn't wide enough, we're unable to put one of our amenities. We do have a CIP project that upgrades some of those locations. So as we go through our system, we look at places where we really would like to have amenities or we don't have good ADA accessibility. We actually have a process through that CIP to upgrade some of those locations. And in fact, we have 7 in the design right now that we hope to put out to construction soon. Our priority with those is that we look at ADA accessibility, and we specifically highlight disadvantaged communities when we choose locations. Current amenities initiatives that are underway, another sidestep from the monitoring report, just to let you know, the board today approved a contract with Tolar Manufacturing for the purchase of additional bus shelters. So we'll be getting about 50 bus shelters a year to expand our shelters, which is great. We've been unable to do that in the past couple of years because our contract had expired. And the other thing is that this new contract includes a smaller shelter where we don't necessarily need 11 or 12 feet, but we can have a slightly narrower sidewalk where we can install a shelter. So that will really expand the number of locations that we can install shelters. There's a similar procurement going on for the installation of these shelters and the maintenance of these shelters for the next couple of years. So that's underway. I mentioned the CIP project that we have for ADA accessibility improvements. Wherever we can, we're adding the space to also include benches or shelters in that. Again, a focus on disadvantaged communities. And again, 7 stops currently in the permitting process with the city of San Diego. Also, whenever we do a plan review for new developments or city projects, we always request an ADA compliant bus stop area, and wherever we can, space for that bus or that shelter so that we can add new amenities as projects open. We are working with our partners to reopen closed restrooms throughout our system. There are 3 in particular: 24th Street in National City, the Lemon Grove Depot, and the SDSU Transit Center. So that's in progress. And then we're also including, wherever we can, restrooms for riders at new TOD development. So most recently, you've heard about that at Spring Street and Palm Avenue stations. So other CIP projects, we're updating and replacing all the VMS signs. These are the variable message signs, the electronic next arrival signs that we have at rapid stations and at trolley stations. Those are all being upgraded to new technology. The old ones are out of date. And then we're doing station upgrades and repairs as part of our CIP at a few different stations, 12th and Imperial, which you heard more about earlier today, El Cajon Transit Center, which is part of the project that will enable the copper line. And then at Rio Vista Station, Mission Valley, there's some repairs being done to the platform there. I also want to give an amenities on an update on the amenities from the social equity listening tour. So Stacy Bishop in our marketing department was very helpful to me in this. We've been installing big belly trash cans. These are the trash compactor, solar compacting trash cans that will really help us keep the stations cleaner. Installation for the Blue Line South started this week, and we'll be completing that by the end of next week. The installation of the downtown corridor is complete. We also installed 10 new shelters in December at sites where we didn't need to do any construction. And then we have a design for bus stop modifications. The RFP for that is going out at the end of this month. And then after that, we'll go into design, city permits, and then a bid for construction. We've also identified 35 bus stops for installation of a solar lighting pilot project. So we've also identified the vendor, and we're working on the procurement for that. Also some orange line lighting projects. Contract proposal is expected by the end of this month, and then it'll be about 5 months to get that project done where we'll have extra lighting along the orange line. And then we're doing beautification efforts, some mural work that we're working on in the South Bay. The Buyer walking path is also underway. So these are all things that came out of the social equity listening tour that show some good progress on the amenities side. So back to specifically the monitoring of policy report that you have. Again, this is required every 3 years. It essentially looks at the policies that we have in place and goes through and how well our current system is adhering to those policies. So this monitoring report does require board approval. So we're going to be asking for that today. The last report was approved in July of 2021, and that was included in May's Title VI program update. A couple highlights: there's several maps in that monitoring report, and the map on the slide here shows a section, obviously just a section of our service area, but the map in the monitoring report is the entire service area. This shows all of the bus stop amenities overlaid with the low income tracts in our service area. So those low income tracts are shown in pink. And on this map, the small black dots are stops without any amenities. The circles, red or blue, are shelters, and the small triangles, red or blue, are benches. The blue ones are amenities that are provided by an organization other than MTS, and then the red ones are our amenities. So on this particular snapshot of Mid-City, you can see a bunch of blue in the upper right. Those are, for example, the City Heights Business Association has several shelters out there. And then you see our corridors, our bus corridors with a lot of our own amenities along them. One of the things that was asked for specifically by Councilmember Moreno in our March meeting was a list of all of the bus stops that would ordinarily warrant some kind of an amenity that don't have them. So there's also a listing of all of our stops that have 25 or more boardings that don't have a bench or a shelter. So that's also included in the monitoring report. And that's a snapshot of that there on this slide as well. So following board discussion at that March meeting, we did make some amendments to the policies for July 1st revision. And the first was following comments by several board members, an acknowledgement of the role that amenities have in attracting new riders and also improving the quality of service for existing riders. So that's now front and center in our distribution of transit amenities policy. We also added a forward section that talks about a new transit amenities plan. This is also something that came out of the March board meeting. It was a request from the board to have a document that's more aspirational in nature. And this may in the future be incorporated into the transit amenities policy. For now, it's going to be a separate transit amenities plan that we'll bring on a consultant to help us with. I'll talk a little bit more about that. We also changed the analysis from Senate Bill 535 and Assembly Bill 1550 metrics for disadvantaged and low income populations to what the state is now using and calling the California Climate Investment Priority Populations. So, and they define both disadvantaged and low income communities with that metric, and that uses the Cal EnviroScreen 4.0. So we've put that out. That was one of the comments that came out of the board discussion also. And again, we added that appendix at the end that includes a list of approximately 115 bus stops that have more than 25 daily boardings but don't have any amenities. There was also some updates to the data and the narrative just to bring things up to current locations. So these were amended for July 1st, 2024. Those have been signed and approved, and those are now in place. But the next steps, first, we're going to ask you today for approval of that monitoring report that's included as an attachment to today's agenda item. And then what we'd like to do is bring back at a future board meeting a procurement of a consultant to review the distribution of amenities policy and recommend future amendments to that policy and come up with a transit amenities plan. So the things that we want to look at in the transit amenities plan are the feasibility, prioritization, and costs of expanding bus stop shelters and benches, especially in disadvantaged communities. One of the things that was asked for in March was the costs of expanding benches and shelters to more stops. So of course, that's very location dependent. And with the number of stops that we have, we could use some assistance in having a consultant help us out with that estimation. We also want in that transit amenities plan to look at the locations, prioritization, feasibility, access, and costs of additional restroom facilities. This has been a longstanding board request. So this is an opportunity to have, again, an outside party come and look at that and make some recommendations and share some of the feasibility and costs with the board. Another thing we've been asked to look at is increasing the number of fare validators on rail platforms. Park and Market was brought up as an example. So that's something else that we would have addressed in the transit amenities plan. And then we'd like to have the consultant look at the funding estimates necessary to achieve all of the desired outcomes that come out of that transit amenities plan. And then ultimately recommend adjustments to this distribution of transit amenities policy. So that when you see this again in 3 years, it will have additional information that we have coming out of that amenities plan. So with that, our recommendation today is that you approve the 2024 Title VI Monitoring Report for Service Policies. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for this report. Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We do. Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Standards like service accessibility and MTS board policy, but if you waive those requirements, then you guys are intentionally skirting federal law, right? Title VI program was coincidentally updated July 1st, but it's still using outdated FDA data, not including Middle Eastern people, right? Feels like East County got thrown under the copper line. For all amenities, people say there's issues with wheelchair ramps not working on the trolleys. And if there's a new copper line with only one car, there's going to be less space for wheelchairs. Transit amenities, not even restrooms guaranteed. Elevators at Grantville, often out of service. Escalators at SDSU, often out of service. And there's so many bus stops without any lighting where bus drivers would be able to see riders waiting, such as in dark Pretty Mesa. Does anyone monitor the accuracy of bus shelter frequency or time schedule? Trolley time signs. Why is the blue line near La Jolla the only area with the fancy digital signs? Were those the Sandag pilots? Only 5 restrooms that don't stay open as long as the trolley, excluding Tilton Imperial. Have any of you ever used them to see their condition? Probably not worth the risk. Kind of like riding the trolley, especially if there's an extra transfer. Done deal. Right, Ron? That's how it works. I get it. Rigged game. I know how it all goes.
Your time has expired. That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you very much, Clerk. We'll begin board discussion of this item, and we'll begin with Director Moreno.
I'm happy to make a motion to accept staff's recommendation on this federal requirement, the monitoring report, right, Title VI. There was a lot packed into your presentation. Thank you so much for that. By the way, I've been a strong advocate of MTS really focusing on building our ridership as a way of getting more riders to come on board, more clients essentially. You mentioned that there was going to be a consultant, that an RFP for a consultant for the transit amenity policy, which I really think, and I continue to stress this, I really think that's the meat of a lot of the discussion that this board has had. This is a policy that we adhere to. So I'm happy that we will be opening that up so that we could digest everything that we say we're going to do and do what we're going to say. Can you let us know how long it will take to procure the consultant, how long the consultant will take to do their review, and when that will be presented to us?
Sure. So the procurement itself will be done in the next 6 to 9 months. And once we bring a consultant on board, it will be a competitive procurement. So once we go through that process and bring a consultant on board, I estimate that we're going to need to give them about a year to do it, just given the number of things that we're going to ask them to look at, as well as the 4,000 plus bus stops. And I don't think they're going to look at every single bus stop, but we're going to ask them to come up with some kind of a prioritization that takes into account equity and ridership, and then come up with some estimates, some round estimates. So I think that's going to take them about a year.
They're going to be looking at the whole policy though, right? Not just at bus stops.
Correct.
Which I'm happy about, but.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And so you said 6 to 9, so we're really looking at about 2026
Yeah.
when this body will be looking at that, looking at their work.
Right, but the board will be brought updates on the project.
I would, okay, and then regarding the best shelter beautification, you mentioned 2 things. You mentioned beautification efforts, which I wasn't aware of in the South Bay, so if I could have a meeting to get information on that. And then you also, I believe, mentioned bus shelters in the South Bay, South San Diego primarily. If I can follow up with that. Chair, I would actually welcome and I would stress for us to maybe take a committee up or have this in one of our committees to open up the transit amenity policy. It's the board's policy, so we should absolutely have a handle on this in conjunction with the work that that this consultant is going to be undergoing. To me, it's I've been sitting here for 5 years now. I think I've been asking for this for at least 3 of those 5. To hear that it's going to take another 2 is, on a policy that we essentially govern is a little bit frustrating, to say the least. So I think, I'm not saying that that committee should take action in 3 months or 3 weeks, but I think it should be developed and formed and take a look at that policy for this board, and in conjunction, I keep on repeating myself, I'm sorry, in conjunction with the work they're doing. So that would be a recommendation. It won't be in the motion, but it will be something that I will continue to stress. I'm happy to serve on that. I don't know if it's a subcommittee or a committee, but like I said, I think this policy is really the meat and potatoes of this agency, and I would like to open it up and take a gander.
Well, thank you, Director Moreno, and thank you for all of your efforts in the past years to help drive this conversation. And I hope that you would consider leading such a committee. And if there are others who would be interested in serving on it, if you would let Director Moreno or me know, I think that this is a committee that would be useful and no sense wasting any time getting it together. So we'll go ahead and see if we can't put something like that together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this item? We have a motion. We will need a second. We have a second from Director Gastel, and let's go to a vote. Clerk, please call the roll.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
McCann,
McCann, aye.
Donovan,
Yes.
Montgomery Step,
Yes.
Goebel,
Yes.
Leyba Gonzalez,
Yes.
Dillard,
Yes.
Gastel,
Aye.
Bush,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Moreno,
Moreno, yes.
Elo Rivera,
Yes.
Gloria is absent, Whitburn,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously with one member absent.
Thank you, Clerk. Let's move on to item 28, and that is a Pronto online reduced fare application update. We're going to invite Israel Maldonado and Amanda Denham to provide this presentation. And once you get settled in and ready to go, please feel free to begin.
Good morning. I'm Israel Maldonado, Director for Technology and Operations, and I'm joined today by our Director of Support Services, Amanda Denham. And today, we are going to provide you with an update on the Reduced Fare Portal progress. We'll start by giving you an update on the project background. We'll touch on some of the verification results over the last several months. And then Amanda will tell us a lot about the great outreach efforts, customer support, customer feedback, and we'll touch on the deadline extension that was conducted at the end of June, and of course, on next steps. But first, a little bit of background on the Pronto system. It was implemented September 2021, almost 3 years ago. Our policy required at the time that all reduced fares undergo verification, but was only really offered in person. Due to the quick transition to the Pronto fare system away from Compass, and also with the horizon of the YOP program, we expected a high demand for reduced fares. As such, we provided a temporary eligibility option to make it more flexible for customers to get their reduced fare. All this with the intent to buy the agency time to implement the new online option, which was always part of the Pronto roadmap. This new option went live December 5th, 2023. Since then, we have verified over 23,000 accounts successfully, with 92% of all applications submitted being successfully approved. This translates to a volume of over 100 plus applications received per day. While we have verified 23,000 accounts since December, we have also verified a total of 80,000 accounts since launch due to the great intense marketing effort over the first year of transition. But we are not done yet. We took a look at our data to identify our active rider base. We define our active rider base as those customers that tapped at least, that completed at least one round trip per week, which translates to right over 20 taps in the last 90 days. This gave us a list of about 6,000 seniors and 19,000 youth that are still to be converted. which means we need more time. And as such, the agency provided an extension through September 30th, 2024 for all cards that have tapped at least once since 2023 or 2024. That means at least one tap in 18 months. This meant that we extended cards for over 22,000 seniors and 87,000 youth. Keeping in mind that a lot of these cards have only been tapped once, which means, as most of us are guilty of, a gift card that it's lost, it's active in the system, but it's really not going to be used ever again. We also provided extensions to any of the cards that were provided as part of outreach to Sandag and other institutions. Those were also extended. With that, I'll turn it over to Amanda, who will tell us more about the ongoing efforts.
Thank you, Israel. And good morning. I'm Amanda Denham, the Director of Support Services. So when you introduce any new tool to writers, we wanted to make sure that we were equipped with the support to help them understand what was now available to them as an additional validation option. And so the Pronto Support Center, the Transit Store, and the passenger support reps played a really important role in that. Since we launched the online reduced fare application, we have seen the average call volume escalate to 8,300 calls a month. About 9 to 10% of those are regarding reduced fare. And that's actually consistent with what we saw pre-online application. It was roughly 8 to 9% of calls then as well. But what we did see was a strong increase in the number of cases that the team is assigned to help process. We went from averaging just around 800 cases a month to just over 2,500 cases a month. The online application does have an automated flow where customers can be approved automatically based on providing an ID that can be verified. But there's also an alternative path that requires the team to take a look at the documents that have been submitted online and provide approval that way. So, for example, a youth school ID or someone who doesn't have a government issued ID. The team in Pronto takes a look at those documents and provides that verification. Thankfully, we did anticipate that that would be an increase in demand on the team there and wanted to make sure that the support team was still able to provide efficient service to our customers. So with your approval, we did add staffing in the month of September last year. And thanks to that, we've been able to keep the wait times in the Pronto Support Center under 35 seconds on average, which you might remember in September, that wait was over 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. So thank you again for the support of the staff. It's really created a better customer experience. In addition, we're able to take care of those cases that come through us in under 3 calendar days. So customers who do have to require manual approval aren't having to wait an inordinate amount of time. In addition to having the support staff available, we've gone through a variety of different ways to communicate with the public about these new options and their requirement to be verified. Specifically, we sent out targeted emails to over 49,000 SDM and youth writers who had provided MTS their email addresses. When those emails were sent, we did see strong spikes in the number of applications through the system. In March and April, when those emails went out, we had significant increases in customer cases, meaning it did provide a good notification. And as I'll go through in a moment, we have survey data that supports the email notifications being one of the primary drivers of customers understanding how this process works. In addition to that, we've provided over 65 hours of outreach events. You can see in the photo there, Daniel and Paulina, 2 of our team members within Pronto, out doing a verification on-site event. We've gone to different organizations, Mid-City Cans, City Heights, Urban Collaborative Project, lots of different organizations who have reached out to us that we've come to them, been able to provide that in-site verification to their customers, their clients, and their community members. This summer, we've been launching the Summer Y2K program to encourage youth to get their accounts validated and use the Youth Opportunity Program to help travel throughout the system. We're continuing with targeted messaging via email and, of course, online communications, stop notifications, and then using the app notification as an additional option. So anytime you launch a new experience, we also want to make sure that we're gathering real user feedback about their experience with the system, and then, of course, be flexible and agile to modify the system based on their feedback. We implemented a user survey as part of the online application in March and received over 700 responses. About half of them were youth and half of them were SDM, and 71% gave feedback that the application was easy or very easy. We were happy to see that feedback. We did find, in general, youth found the application easier than seniors did. I think youth are definitely accustomed to doing most things online, and so that correlation was expected. But we did receive some feedback on some challenges. Namely, the biggest challenge was finding the application. And so we did make modifications to where the application is located. We created more step-by-step videos and documents to help provide clear steps on what buttons to select to get to where people needed. And of course, all of that was provided in multiple languages. We distributed those materials to our partners through different toolkits and have been able to have some really good partnerships to get that information out to our writers. The other piece of making it easy is making sure it's efficient. Prior to the online application, customers had to come in person to our downtown transit store, which is not convenient for a lot of our writers. And so if we were producing an online application, we wanted to make sure that it was also something that could be done efficiently. About 60% of the writers reported that it takes less than 10 minutes to complete the application. 3/4 of the users said it took less than 15 minutes. And so that was encouraging for us to understand that we do feel like the application process is in alignment with many other comparable applications for other benefits and services. Youth, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, did report faster times. And again, it's taking 10 to 15 minutes to provide unlimited transit throughout the system. And know for our sake that we have provided an easy medium, but also know that those who are using the YOP benefit have been verified to be truly eligible for the program so that we aren't being irresponsible with taxpayer dollars. We have received customer feedback through both our Pronto Support Center and our customer service team. We've been monitoring that very closely, and I'm pleased to report that there's been a very small handful of customers who have reported complaints about the system. When we've received those complaints, we've been able to work directly with the customer who is impacted. The great team in Pronto will stay online with the customer, walk them fully through the application, and really work to make sure that the process can be as painless as possible and that we get them verified in a way that's responsible for their eligibility. I'll turn it over to Israel.
Thanks, Amanda. And we're not done yet. As with all the systems that we implement, we don't just set them and forget them. You have to continue to iterate. Otherwise, the systems become stale. So what are the next steps? We are going to add a capability for our institutional partners to provide the reduced fare status immediately, directly through their institutional portal. So that'll be a great addition to our institutional partners. We're also going to implement a customer-specific 30, 60, and 90-day expiration email notification. As the system evolves, as we head into the years to come, customers with a renewal that applies will get an alert 90, 60, 30 days out so that they can renew and reduce the impact on their account and their benefit. And we are going to continue to provide flexibility with temporary eligibility requests that are made to Amanda's team, to the support services team. We have the ability through our customer relationship module to apply a temporary expiration date. And so as customers call in, because they may need time to get a document ID replacement so that they don't miss out on the benefit right away. And we will continue to monitor the results. We'll continue to look at the data and to give us a better understanding of the progress as we head into September and then make a decision then. With that, questions, comments? Thank you.
Very good. Thank you both. Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We do. Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Still here for the game. Buy the agency time. How about buy it credibility? The evidence continues to mount that MTS may have been pushed to hurry and implement the new Pronto app to coincide with Sandag's Blue Line Mid-Coast extension, despite it not being properly tested and vetted for loopholes and inconsistencies. I haven't seen evidence of any improvements yet, nor evidence that Global ever tapped. It's amazing that 91% of all applications are approved with over 100 applications a day. That makes this whole reduced fare system come across as questionable. What does less than one round trip per week mean? Does that mean our elders or children are going missing, not coming back home? And how are there only a little more than 20 taps in 3 months with 19,000 children and 6,000 elders riding? Is this an inequitable public transit system where only 18 or 24-year-olds to 64-year-olds are expected to tap and pay? I'd also like MTS to stop partnering with CBOs until the CBOs have to register the areas they actually serve. This was exposed at a recent Senate meeting that they may not be representing the areas they claim. City High CDC, Mid-City
Your
Canyon,
time
Urban
has
Collaborative
expired.
Project cover very.
Here, that concludes public comment.
Thank you very much, Clerk. We will now begin board discussion on this item. This is an informational item, so no motion is necessary. And we'll begin with Director Gonzalez.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, staff. I heard a lot of great progress on making this a smoother transition, including accessibility and at the end, the flexibility that you're working with. I think that's great and commendable. You mentioned 92% approval rate for completed applications, which is fantastic. But I think previously you had shared a percentage of abandoned applications in process. Is that available? Is that still an issue?
We can definitely get back to you on the abandonment rate for applications that haven't been completed. I don't have that offhand right now, but we can get back to you on that.
I think that's worth keeping an eye on. Additionally, you mentioned that previously people could go to the downtown central store if they were having problems with the online application. Is that still an option? Are there other in-person options for people who are having problem with technology?
Yeah, absolutely. The online application was never intended to replace the in-person experience, and that absolutely is still available to any customer. Even if they begin the online application and struggle, they can go into the transit store and we're happy to assist them and get them verified in person.
Great.
Other in-person options also exist. As I mentioned, we do various outreach events. Anybody interested in hosting such an event can reach out to our marketing team. We make those arrangements. We do multiple a week. The staff from Pronto actually goes out with teams from marketing. They bring this technology to the people, get their pictures uploaded, get them all set.
And that's great to hear. It certainly sounds like the Pronto team, the outreach team is doing their job, their best efforts, and it's showing results. I would also make the comment that I hope there's an effort to empower staff as much as possible, especially during this transition process, to do their best to communicate all the different options to individuals and to work with them using common sense as well, especially when it comes to some of the individuals that may not know they're eligible or how to become eligible during the transition period. So empowering all staff, so the enforcement staff, drivers, people who don't usually do the outreach and communication should be part of this effort. And then on a related note, there was conversation at the Chula Vista City Council, so I'm carrying the message that they would love for us to consider free seniors rates or lack of rates, free senior ridership in the future. And so that right now that was an unofficial request, but I will mention that. And I'm open to following that up either offline communications with staff and our CEO or requesting that in writing as a formal position for deliberation from our city. So I will mention that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gonzalez. Vice Chair Goebel.
Thank you, Chair. Could we go back one slide to slide 10, please? One of the things I like best is implement customer-specific 30, 60, 90-day expiration. You know, we live in a world where we just get bombarded with emails and we kind of filter through, what do I need to work on today? What's expiring today? What do I lose a discount on today? So this is a great feature that you're doing. I would encourage you to help people by saying, what do you want me to do? I mean, this particular graphic says, oh, you have to provide online eligibility. I know. Where? What link do I click? And make it easier on folks to really just tell me what to do. And it's a great feature, and thank you for adding that.
Thank you, Vice Chair Goebel. I think that's very much, your experience is very much reflected in terms of the way that we saw the spikes in applications. You saw big spikes in March and April when we had some initial expiration dates set. We've done extensions since then. The June extension was obviously made in June, so you did see big spikes in applications. So you're absolutely right. We all wait till the last moment. So if we could be as clear and direct as possible in the communication, we'll do so. Thanks.
Any further board discussion on this item? Seeing none, again, that was an informational item. Thank you again for the update. Let's move to item 29, and that is a zero emission bus program and transportation plan update. And we're going to invite Mike Wygant and Jared Valdez to provide this presentation.
Good morning, Chair Whitmer, members of the board. Again, I'm Mike Wygant, Chief Operating Officer here at San Diego MTS, and I'm joined to my left with Jarrett Valdez. He's our ZEB and Sustainability Manager. So the team has prepared our annual report that really kind of highlights our progress and our performance with our ultimate goal of transitioning our fleet to zero emission by 2040. So I know we have a few items after us, so I'm going to try to stay a little high level, but welcome to go into more detail, or if you want me to dive into certain areas, I'm always welcome to. So first off, just a little bit of history. This transition to lower emission vehicles actually started way before probably most of you were involved with this. Some of us have been around long enough, but converting within the state of California the diesel fleet to a cleaner emissions has been a CARB initiative since even prior to 2000. But the original urban fleet rule was what's dictated that through regulation, the reduction. The original rule was a emissions reduction. So you had a baseline and then you were required to reduce your output and tonnage annually over different tiers. In 2018, more familiar times, they amended the original urban fleet rule through what's called the ICT, and it changed it from an emissions reductions to a technology-based regulation, switching from a reduction in emissions to a technology, meaning purchasing mandate of vehicles based on the technology that was available. And that's been in play and was approved in 2018. And the first tier of requirement started in 2023. Any purchase order for a vehicle for an agency of our size required a 25% purchasing requirement for a zero emission compared to combustion. And then it has in the draft ICT tiers increase in 2026 to 50% and 2029 to 100%, with the ultimate goal that by 2040, most agencies should have all of their combustion vehicles out of service with a typical 12-year lifespan of a vehicle. So a little bit of history with MTS as it relates to the ICT. We started early planning as early as October of 2017, working with the board to get some direction on a pilot program to really get our feet wet, even though it wasn't legally required. We put in some charging infrastructure. You see some pictures here of just basically some plugins to support that early pilot. We started off at our Imperial Avenue division, but eventually put those standalone chargers at 4 of our 5 operating divisions. We got our first 6 battery electric buses in service in December of 2019 to support that pilot, to really collect information specific to how we can operate in our service area and what the impacts to this pending ICT amendment would be. From that information and that we had collected and with some help with some consultants, we developed a transition or a rollout plan for the board's consideration, which they approved and was submitted to CARB in late 2020. The pilot program, in essence, ended to support the data to help us build this transition in December of 2021. And those vehicles then went just straight into revenue service on routes that they could be acclimated to. Since then, we've continued to work on master plans for each one of our operating divisions. So what that construction and the timelines associated with vehicle replacements as part of the regulation. So we had to do a master plan for each division. I know a lot of you have been involved or seen pictures. What you see in the top right is our South Bay division. That was our first real expansion of an expandable application of ZEBs where we have overhead charging, and it was to support the new Iris 227. That was with 12 battery electric buses. Later this year, we're still working on adding solar or a microgrid, but that service has been in place since October of last year and performing very well. Another big component of is what we call a CMS or a charge management system. That's when right now we have 25 battery electric buses. It's can be manually managed as far as the grid capacity and the charging windows to get the vehicles ready for pullout. But we have nearly 800 vehicles in our fleet, so we're going to need some automation and some technology. So we have a charge management system that we're kind of maturing along and moving towards more of an autonomous charging application to support basically grid capacity and the lowest available electricity at the right time. So I'm going to go into a little bit of the performance of the vehicles. Again, we have 25 vehicles battery electric vehicles on the street right now. So this first graph is really just what we call the efficiency performance of the 40-foot vehicles. There's 13 of those in the system right now. Not a big golfer, but I've been told that a lower score is a better number. So that's what you're looking for here. The efficiency, unlike your car, this is kilowatts per mile. So the lower number is better. On our 40-foot vehicles, they're not as big as the 60. They're a little lighter. They actually get a little better efficiency, but they have less battery on board. We have 3 different versions of the 40-foot buses ranging from 444 to 466 kilowatts on board. What it really translates is to about 130 miles of planned range. On a good day, some of them will get more than that, but I can't really do it on the fly once I put them out there on the blocks. So we basically assign them to routes that do 130 or less miles on a daily basis. And so you can just kind of see the performance per month, temperature. There's a lot of, I'll go into it a few slides later. There's a lot of variables on why they don't always get the exact same kilowatt per mile. And this is the 60-foot bus. It's 30% bigger, it's 30% heavier. It does have quite a bit more onboard storage, but it does translate to less efficiency because of that. Just by luck, it translates to another 130 miles. So that's really what we're limited with the 25 that we have today as the technology as we see it today. A lot of other factors, the routes, each individual route, we have temperature, we have a lot of different climate issues on different routes. So you'll see different range or efficiencies by route. Here's an examples of a few of them. You'll see the 227 there in the middle, the 3.0. That's the least efficient or the least performing route, but that's to be expected because that's predominantly the heavier 60-foot bus that's on that route. So that's not unexpected. There's nothing wrong with that route. That's just the vehicles that are on it. This is an important graph that we look at. This is really what I call the one-for-one analysis. The orange line on the top at about 3,200, that's the average mileage that we put on our CNG fleet per vehicle per month. This is kind of like a duty cycle assessment. And what you see in the graphs of the columns of the blue is the battery electric bus's performance, the average amount of miles that it can accumulate on a monthly basis. A lot of that is a range limitation. Some of it is an availability or reliability issue. But what you're seeing there in the graph is a steady improvement. So the technology is getting better. We're fine-tuning it and finding better ways to run them. But the technology limitation with the vehicles that we have today, it's still doing a little bit more than half or right about half of what a CNG bus. And that's really important to remember because we really want to focus on a one-for-one replacement. That's what the regulation was designed for us to replace combustion vehicles, one combustion vehicle with one zero-emission vehicle. So right now we're heading the right direction, but we're not there yet. Some of those factors I was talking about was topography, speed, climate, behavior, driver behavior, the amount of times we open the door, cycle the door, the average speed of the vehicle. All of those are a big deal and make an impact. A combustion vehicle has a lot of resources because of the auxiliary equipment coming off the engine to provide air and hydraulics basically free of charge. But on a zero emission vehicle, every time you open a door, close a door, it actually reduces the range. There's a sweet spot in the average speed. They don't do well on the freeway because they can't regenerate. So in town they do a little bit better. Again, what you can see from the graph is each individual fleet and how they perform. A little caveat to, you'll see why I said they have to only go 130 miles. Well, there's numbers are all in excess of 130. At 143 on average, our electric vehicles need a tow truck. So that's not our goal. We want to be just below that. So we set the standard at 130. There's some really good news here. This is basically our operating costs, not capital costs, excluding the capital costs for the vehicle or the infrastructure, and I'll cover that a little bit later. But the actual operating costs once they're in service. What you see in the orange and the blue is the cost of the fuel or the charging in this case, or the CNG, and the cost of the maintenance. We're seeing about a 25 cent per mile advantage to running a battery electric bus compared to a CNG vehicle. Some caveats on that. A few more of them are under warranty than our CNG. It's still early in their life. Our earliest vehicles have about 5 years of service on them. We don't know what the long-term battery performance will be, so that may be a big ticket item that would skew these numbers at some point in time. And as we start to escalate or increase this transition, right now we're basically getting electricity at what we call the super off-peak, so the lowest cost, so that's driving the number down. And that may change with SDG&E's rates over time, and it may change as we get more and more battery electric vehicles. But right now, hey, great news, we can operate them on the street cheaper than we can a CNG vehicle. So this is just a little more data on the monthly kilowatt usage versus the cost per month at a division. You see the huge spike. That's really to be expected. That was the implementation of the 227. So it was almost doubling our battery electric fleet. Availability, I talked about a little bit earlier. On the left, you have the availability of the chargers. So we have overhead chargers at South Bay, and we'll have overhead chargers at all our divisions eventually. And we have plug-in chargers, and we analyze on a day-to-day the availability of that equipment because without the charging, I can't put the vehicle on the road. Our CNG infrastructure is very reliable. It's not 100%. Occasionally we have some issues. So it is improving, but it needs to get better. And I'm sure that will happen with the improvement of the technology and the newer equipment. On the right, you're seeing the availability of the buses. Some good news is both our CNG and our battery electric fleet are continuing to improve as it relates to their availability. But what you can see from the graph on the right is the BEV's availability is a little bit lower than the natural gas or the combustion vehicle. It's not that they fail more on the road. It's when they're down, it takes longer to figure out how to diagnose them. Parts availability with the new technology, it's a little bit expected, but it is progressing in the right direction. We talked about range a lot. The 48% number, that really means within our system, 48% of our blocks today could be operated with the technology that we have. And so our expectation is the battery electric will continue to improve, so it'll take on more and more of our blocks. Just a couple of examples of some of the routes that we operate them on now. And as far as the deployment between our 5 divisions that have the infrastructure, we have both plug-in and in some cases overhead. And also in the middle of that grid, it shows our soon-to-be CTAC area or our newest division. But what you can look at there is you can see both low and disadvantaged communities, low income and disadvantaged communities. So we have a pretty good deployment of our ZEBs already. But the rationale is first you have to have the infrastructure, then you have to have a block that they would fit on. And then from there, we'll focus them in on the DACs and the low incomes as we start to deploy more and more vehicles. So here on the right, you'll see the picture of the South Bay Division. If you haven't been there, that was an early part of the construction. This slide is just really kind of outlining the schedule. As I mentioned, the South Bay facility already has the phase 1 of the overhead complete. There's 24 positions there. We'll be back there in 2027 to add 49 additional ones. Imperial Avenue, that's where our focus is right now, right down the street. We've already started construction. I think Dennis mentioned it a little bit earlier. And then we'll move off to Kearney Mesa and then to our East County. And so each one of our locations will have a series of phases to be in advance of the vehicle replacements. And as funding can come in, we can't, somebody might say, well, why wouldn't you just build out one division all at the same time? Well, we couldn't maintain continuity of operations if the whole division was completely under construction. So that kind of parlays into it too. You also wouldn't want to use today's technology because this is really we're all holding on to the first iPhone right now when we talk about battery electric buses. They're going to get better. The charging infrastructure is going to get better. So you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself, even if you had all the money at the time. Some more pictures of the South Bay facility. On the right, what you see is the overhead pantograph that'll come down autonomously and then touch the vehicle and charge it. And that's really kind of the blueprint for the transition of each phase for overhead charging. So this particular system charges 24 vehicles, and we just basically continue throughout that division each time we come back to build another module of overhead charging. I mentioned Imperial Avenue Division is where we're really focused out right now. The master plan was completed back in August of 2022. Phase one will support 30 charging positions, and that's what's circled there in the red circle. We had to do some preliminary construction before we start to build the overhead gantry. That location is actually underground, is where all of the obsolete diesel tanks used to be, and some other lubrication storage tanks, or all we call UST, or underground storage tanks. So we started the process of removing those already and installing new overhead ASTs to support lubrication, obviously not diesel. We don't need diesel in the facility anymore. So once that's done, then they'll come in and start building the overhead gantry system. And we expect it to be complete by 2026. Kearney Mesa, we're working, we just completed the master plan earlier this year, and we're working on the design right now. But again, we expect construction in 2026 and to be completed in 2027 there. We talked a lot about the CTAC, the new division. There's a rendering of kind of a preliminary design that we're continuing to work through. I think you're all aware we're still working on land acquisition. We do have some funding, but it does have an estimate of about a $350 million price tag on that. It is going to be pretty unique because it'll be two different layers. The lower layer will have vehicle storage and the maintenance facility. In the upper section will be where there'll be battery electric overhead charging and our administration offices. There will also be in the corner, this will be, will also include hydrogen at this facility. Our transition plan assumes that batteries, while they're more affordable to operate, which right now they are compared to hydrogen, we're going to stay on that path until we run into either a range limitation where we have to switch to hydrogen, or the cost of hydrogen actually becomes more affordable compared to battery electric, and then our transition plan will start to pivot at that point a little bit, or the possibility of a new technology that's never been developed. So, but we're working through that plan at the same time. Some other developments, workforce development. This is a new technology, so every technician, operator, servicer, even the management staff has to go through familiarity and higher levels of training to support the maintenance and the state of good repair. Big focus in on safety, as with all of our vehicles. Every heavy-duty vehicles inherently has some safety issues. Natural gas had plenty of its own issues. There's just some unique ones associated to battery electric. We also spend a lot of time with our emergency responders. The fire department comes in on a very regular basis in different parts of the region to use our vehicles and to train on our vehicles for in the event of something that we would need their help with. The team spends a lot of time kind of monitoring hydrogen and making sure that we have plans for hydrogen. What you see in the top right of the picture here, of the slide here, is an 18,000 gallon above ground storage tank. That's really kind of the crossover point to make it somewhat efficient. But as you can see, it takes a lot of footprint. Really the problem with the hydrogen right now is the footprint it takes to get started, and the cost of the hydrogen per mile is about 3 times what it is to run an electric bus right now. So that may change. I know the state's working on a lot of different programs to try to put in infrastructure to buy that down, and as it becomes more available, it could very well drop. And at that point, we might consider pivoting our transition plan. Non-revenue fleet, we have a program with San Diego Gas and Electric that should start early next year, where we start to put infrastructure in at some of our divisions so that we can start supporting implementation of our administrative vehicles in a zero emission state. So the first ones will be battery electric. Some more timelines. Again, we have 13 more battery electric buses coming. They'll start construction late this year for deployment in early next year. Those will go to South Bay. Right now, under the ICT, we're under a 25% procurement requirement. So if we buy combustion vehicles, we have to buy at least 25% zero emission vehicles. In 2026, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but in 2026, it's set to change to 50%. And then in 2029, it'll go to 100%. Here's just kind of a graph that shows our transition from combustion, which is in the kind of the tan, I guess you would say, or the brown area. And as we move to battery electric, green, and then hydrogen throughout our transition from now to 2040. Funding, we've been fairly successful in a lot of areas. I mean, we have an ultimate goal with this transition is to provide equal or more service and protect the integrity and the quality of the service that we provide through this transition. Doesn't do in the region any good if we can convert to battery electric buses, but we have to reduce our service by 25% to pay for it. And so far, we've done that. We've, collectively, between all of our funding, received more than $100 million to support this transition. I'm going to go through some slides later to show you how far we still need to go. But we've had some great success through LC Top and the HFIB, the TIRCP. SDG&E has helped us out. We have a program with them where some of our construction that they'll give us a rebate or incentive, and we've collected $1.3 million at our South Bay facility alone. And that was an $8 million project. So although it didn't cover more than half of it, we'll take it. We have received some federal funding, not a large amount, but and we've continued to apply for things like the RAISE grant and the Low-No, and we have not been successful to this point, but we will not be deterred. We'll continue to work through that. The most recent one, we were not awarded. We're going to get a debrief here pretty soon to see where we can help our case to try to get additional funding. And we'll look through TIRCP and a few others through the EPA. Here's some really good news that I think most of you are in tune with. The 125 or SB 125 had more than, was it $260 million coming to our agency, and we've heard it's coming, it's not coming, it's frozen, it's not frozen. We're not sure when it's coming, but I think the most recent vision is we've got a piece of paper. I have it in my office. It's framed. It's coming. We don't know exactly when it'll be released, but about a little over 46 million of that is directed to support the infrastructure and the ZEB transition. And so there's a breakdown of each division of where it will go. So continue to support our goal of managing this transition without destroying the integrity of the service that we provide today, and hopefully even improving it. So there's a lot going on this slide here. Some of the highlights are really just to show you the cost of a CNG bus compared to a battery electric bus. There's anywhere between a $350,000 to almost $500,000 delta per vehicle. So the vehicles are costly. Again, I mentioned the infrastructure. It was 24 charging ports at South Bay, cost $8 million for that complete overhead system. But there's a lot to it besides just the steel structure. You've got chargers, you have switch gears, you have transformers. That number is also, it was offset by 1.3 from support from San Diego Gas and Electric. But it also is a little bit misleading because there's some cost in there where we are preparing for phase 2, whether it's trenching and conduit and footings. It made a lot more sense to spend the money to prepare for phase 2. So it's not an exact matchup. Again, CTAC is a big focus point, and the estimate about 350 million. So real quick, the graphs that you see on the left, the first two on the left were the original cost estimates for this transition that were provided to the board for consideration in 2019, 2020. That was 2019 and 2020 money, and a lot's happened since then. Basically, what those graphs on the left said was that there was more than a $600 million cost compared to status quo. In other words, if we continue to buy natural gas vehicles and we continue to maintain that infrastructure and buy natural gas fuel, compared to the graph to the right of it, it was going to cost us nearly $650 million extra to complete this transition. Well, what you see in the two graphs on the right now, the delta really has changed, but it's really changed because of inflation. That number is near $800 million now. But as I mentioned, we've already collected about $100 million to support this transition. So let me know if you find another $700 million. That's where it comes down to. So a lot of great lessons that we've learned. We're on the right path so far. There's agencies that have gone hydrogen, battery electric, combination of the two, one or the other. Right now, we've managed to put 25 vehicles out there. They're operating pretty well. They're other than the range limitation, but we have, like I said, 48% of our blocks could be operated by these vehicles. We've done a pretty good job. I think the customers really like them. The drivers like them. They're within the range limitations, they're a true 1-for-1 at this point, and they're showing a cost improvement to operate them. We were expecting the range to continue to improve, and it went stagnant. And when I say improve, not necessarily so much on our vehicles, but the industry, the vehicles that were available. We saw about a year and a half where nothing really moved, and we're starting to get a little worried. But just recently, both OEMs have put out new vehicles, and first versions of them are proving pretty significant range improvements, closer to 200 miles per range. So that's a huge jump. That would increase the amount of blocks that we could operate those on. Construction timelines, we knew that was going to be difficult, and this is by far the most difficult part of this, building the infrastructure to support this charging. The vehicles are not easy, they're expensive, but clearly the more complex part of it is the construction, and kudos to Heather Fury and her team back there. They really get the grunt of that. So inflation, I talked about that. The inflation costs have really bumped up this transition, but we are seeing the improvement with the operating costs. Redundancy. So redundancy with a combustion vehicle, and we're all 100% CNG when it relates to our combustion vehicles. There is a redundancy if there's an electrical power outage. We can turn on generators and still pump fuel. There are some limitations to that. Right now, the industry has not really developed a clear redundancy for the electric grid. There's a lot of things being floated by the utilities about a second feed. We're looking at microgrids, our own standby generators, but the fact of the matter is right now, with 25 vehicles or 50 vehicles, we're going to make service if we have some issues. We've got some plan Bs. But when we get to 600 or 700 vehicles, we're going to have to develop another answer to deal with that redundancy. And funding, as I mentioned, looking at an $800 million price tag, we still have a lot of money to collect to complete this transition. Some of the steps, the next steps we're working on now, you see pictures of our Imperial Avenue division. That was setting the new above ground storage tanks. On Monday, they'll start digging up the ground to pull the underground ones out. We'll backfill that, pave the tarmac, and then I think it's going to be later this year or early next year. They're going to start putting up the gantry system to support the charging. Again, just kind of a lot of positive outcomes. They're operating out there every day. The public loves them. They're clearly providing an improvement to our region as it relates to emissions. Public has great feedback for them. The operating cost has proved to be a good advantage for us. We've received a lot of funding, again, to support our ultimate goal to not degrade or reduce the level of service that we have. The range limitations that I talked about are still kind of stalling a little bit, but this news that we've seen in the last 6 months is enlightening. And we're really focused in on the construction timelines. That's trying to get some of the materials and equipment. If there's going to be a delay, it may be from the infrastructure. It could also be from the bus side. Some of the manufacturers, we've gotten all ours delivered on time, but it seems to be a factor that's growing. So that's it.
And I think
it.
it's important to note the milestone. We just passed 1 million miles on zero emission technology.
Right. Save that one for the boss. Yeah. So as of last month, we surpassed 1 million miles of battery electric service. So I'm working on the GHG calculations, but I think the preliminary number is the amount of CO2s that we've reduced within the region translates to about 5 million passenger vehicle miles. So that's a significant reduction to the region. So we'll get you the official number. Don't take that one to the press.
That is fantastic. Mother Earth thanks you. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Mother Earth, but the people say ZEBs are the biggest waste of money that MTS has. There's nothing innovative about buses that rely on combustible lithium, whose extraction harms the environment, pollutes communities, and is processed into batteries by a communist country, China, with forced labor. Lithium fires emit toxic fumes full of deadly chemicals like hydrogen cyanide, putting firefighters in every surrounding community at risk of cancer. Lithium fires require thousands of gallons of water to put out, and that water becomes hazardous waste, and the batteries are still prone to reignite. These ugly ZEBs are also 60 foot. Why not mini buses for most areas? Sandag's pushing microtransit. It's not actually going to work in most cities, but it may take away business from MTS. Where's your solution? Charging these buses in the South Bay is just like throwing battery storage sites in the South Bay. Government dumping and hoping no one will speak up. Regular buses are outperforming these stupid ZEBs by more than double the monthly mileage, and they can't be rapid if they can't make it on the highways. You were wrong, Sharon. I think you should refund MTS. Even the overall total cost per mile is unimpressive. How much to replace the batteries? That's why other
Your
states
time
already
has
scrapped their
expired.
electric buses.
Chair, that concludes public comment.
Thank you, Clerk. We will now open board discussion on this item. It's an informational item, so again, no motion is necessary, and we'll begin our conversation with Director Bush.
Yeah, thank you, staff. Thank you, Mike, so much for the presentation and your work. And then when I was at the conference, showing me around and letting me see all this technology. So you kind of spoke about the greenhouse gas reduction. So on this slide that shows there's several slides that show efficiency and total miles. So is there a similar chart that talks about the environmental benefits like the greenhouse gas reduction? I didn't see that here, but even besides the greenhouse gas, just the emissions period from the buses. So I think next time, if there's any way we can get that data, because it also helps us to better understand that even if the mileage isn't as efficient as CNG, the benefit we're getting is, reduced emissions, therefore potentially increased health. I don't know what that number would be, but do you see where I'm getting at?
Yes, absolutely. Great question and a great direction. Yeah, we do have some of that data, and we can put that graph in the next reports, and I can even put it together. I think we're talking about doing a press release as it relates to the miles that we've already done. It's not that you're absolutely correct that they're not, my comparison to this slide isn't to say that they're less efficient. They just, with the technology today, won't go as far as a CNG vehicle. It's an issue that we need to remain focused in on because although our average route length in our system, across the whole system, is just about 140 miles. So we're close to covering almost 50%. We do have some routes like the 235 that go over 500 miles a day. So the technology has some ways to go. That's where hydrogen may come in, or a new battery chemistry are developed. There's a lot of different things that can happen in the next 16 years. So I didn't want someone to think that the battery electrics are less efficient than a combustion vehicle. Actually, you could make a case that they're actually just the opposite. But we will definitely put together the data that shows the emissions improvements to our region in metric tonnage. We have all that data. It actually came up the other day, and I've already submitted the slide, so that one's on me.
All right, thank you very much, and we'll go now to Director Moreno.
Thank you for the presentation. And I just want to start off by saying how lucky we are to have Mike leading this effort. I've been out in the South Bay facility, which Mike gave me a tour, and it was truly fascinating, as well as attending ZebCon last year, which I think this year is in Philadelphia, so I will not be able to attend. But you kind of glanced over hydrogen and our efforts, and that is concerning to me. I would like us to make more of a concerted effort, whether it be yes or no, but to study whether we want to go down the hydrogen road.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, we've already invested in sending Mike to an international conference on hydrogen specifically to help train him, because internationally it's more in the marketplace than it is yet here in the United States.
Yeah. And from ZebCon last year, it sounded like Philadelphia was very far ahead, I guess, in the hydrogen arena. Maybe I'm wrong. But I want to see if it is worth us chatting about and seeing what you think about it.
Agreed, absolutely. One, we've always assumed it's in our transition plan just because of the range limitations. There's not a hydrogen vehicle that can do the 235 yet either. But there are lots of agencies that we have spent many time with. Actually, we have on the books a trip in August up to OCTA because they've got a pretty good program there. A lot of us have been to AC Transit. We've been to Foothill. We've been to a lot of different organizations that are dabbling in it. Some of them are 100% focused in on that. Some of them have had it and then said, now I'm going to battery electric for cost purposes. And a lot of them are doing what we're doing. We have a, you're going to use both technologies to get you to that goal. But yeah, we're very invested in it. Philadelphia is actually not a big hydrogen hub. There are lots of places. They're just using that location because they wanted to get out of California to allow other states a little easier travel to get in to look at it. But we're very vested in watching hydrogen. We're building hydrogen plans into CTAC. And that would be similar to what you see there, probably a 25,000 gallon above ground tank. So that would support about 50 plus vehicles on a daily basis. So I suspect you're going to see hydrogen here in the next 3 to 4 years. That could really change is the cost. Right now I'm trying to provide as much service and not with the limited funds that we have, keep that service out on the street. As much as there are some advantages to hydrogen from an operating standpoint, a little more range, it fuels a lot faster. The infrastructure is actually a little more affordable and a little less complex, but that operating range is a real barrier at this point. And also the availability of it in the region.
And
But
I think that was,
We're super focused in on it.
that was the
Good point.
question, right? Do we store it or do we ship it in or I guess truck it in, which is the big conversation. And I think this conversation, because we're about to invest and we have been investing a lot of money into the electrification of our fleet. So I think it might behoove us to, I'm going to lean in a little bit on the state government here and see if there are any opportunities for us to tap into their funding or, to tap into their funding to explore hydrogen to the extent that we want to. Like I said, we're about to spend a lot of our SB 125 money on the electrification of our fleet. And I'm wondering how much of that should it be hydrogen? So thank you for the work you do, though. I think we are absolutely in good hands. And I trust you're going to go to Philadelphia as well, to ZEPCOM. Wonderful.
We'll be there.
Wonderful. Thank you guys for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Moreno. Seeing no further discussion on this item, thank you very much for this update. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
First and foremost, Mike, I want to congratulate you on that million mile mark. I know it wasn't all from the 227 doing laps over in Imperial Beach, but joking aside, I appreciate the work that you've done and substantially moving the 227 from 3rd to 9th. My life is so much less stressful addressing so many of the negative comments that had come up from that. So I appreciate it. I thank you. Just one of the comments constantly remains because they still refer to it as a ghost bus because the ridership isn't as, substantial on the 227. But thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Leyva Gonzalez. All right, seeing no further discussion on this item, we will move along to item number 30. And that is a presentation on non and former rider market research. And we're going to invite Stacy Bishop to come up and lead the presentation on this item.
Good morning / almost afternoon, board members. My name is Stacy Bishop. I am the manager of marketing and communications. I am joined today by Stitch Marketing Research and Jyoti Falero. We're excited to bring you this item. Hopefully, as you all know, we have made a more concerted effort in recent years to really do more data-driven community engagement and customer outreach to really get feedback that can help us drive decisions. And a lot of that has been really customer centric with our customer satisfaction tour, the social equity listening tour. And so one of the holes in that effort was really, what do people who are not on transit think? As we're trying to increase ridership, well, who's not on board and why are they not riding with us? What barriers, motivations do they have? And so as part of our contract with Neffer Smith Tucker, who's a marketing firm, we hired Stitch to conduct some research of non-riders and former riders. And so Jyoti's going to go over those results for us today, and then we'll talk about how we plan to use that data in the near term. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jyothi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jyothi Falero. I am Vice President of Strategy at Stitch Marketing Research. We are a San Diego-based market research and strategy agency. We're always proud to boast our clients that are here in the region, San Diego Community Colleges, San Diego Airport, Voice of San Diego. So excited to be presenting here today, and thank you for your time. We, as Stacy mentioned, will be talking about non-current riders. Really important work, obviously, that's happening now, and resources that are being used to speak to current riders and understand customer satisfaction, and appreciate this effort to understand if there are any gaps in whether it's services or awareness that we can help non-riders bridge. The research objectives, we won't read everything here, but basically we were hoping to understand from this non-current rider group awareness of MTS services, their perceptions currently of MTS, and evaluate whether any improvements or how we can communicate any confusion or lack of awareness to these folks to hopefully encourage increased ridership. Now, non-current riders, people who are not currently riding with MTS, there's a spectrum of folks. People who simply are not going to ride with public transit or ever choose public transit, to folks who maybe used to ride with MTS and maybe no longer are, and then the spectrum in between of people who've never ridden but might have interest to ride. If we had all of the marketing budget and time in the world, I'm sure we could convince folks who don't choose public transit to choose MTS. But rather, to be more efficient, it was important for us to understand non-current riders as folks who are open to using MTS, but for some reason, at this moment in time, are not riding. We surveyed 500 respondents in the region, and these were folks broken out into two different segments. One being our non-riders, we're defining as folks who, yes, have never ridden with MTS, or folks who are really infrequent riders, maybe once a year, averaging one trip a year in the past 5 years. We also had a subsegment of respondents who we are calling former riders, lapsed riders, people who haven't used the system prior to January of 2023. All of our respondents live in a or commute to an MTS service area zip code. And yes, non-rejectors of MTS or public transit generally. It was important for us to make sure that these insights, again, are really reaching folks who are, forgive a marketing term, our lowest hanging fruit here, and how we can increase their ridership. And this fieldwork was conducted back in spring. So we'll talk about awareness, we'll get into perceptions, we'll also talk about drivers and barriers, as well as some optimal use cases. We're going to be showing you some charts and graphs, so appreciate your time as we're orienting you to these charts. So first, starting with MTS awareness more broadly, understandably, there's a range of experience here with these respondents. We do see that more than half of these non-current riders are familiar with San Diego MTS. A third of them would say that they're very familiar with its services. 51% of these non-current respondents believe they have an idea of how to figure out MTS bus routes. 59% would say the same about the MTS trolley lines, which does beg the question of, well, what about the other half that maybe don't feel so confident in doing so? But this was good news for us to know that for these folks who for some reason aren't using it now, there is a level of familiarity overall. We did want to test that, pressure test that with some of our services, specific services. So for all of our non-current riders, this is our 500 sample, we do see that yes, trolley system, bus routes are really driving that awareness, our core services. It's good news. We do see a significant drop off there. You'll see this green and red is our heard of this and using, heard of this and maybe use it a little bit, down to the black there, which is never heard of this, so no awareness of these services. You'll notice that drop off to our park and ride lots, the zero emission electric buses, there is some awareness there, but also some room to grow awareness. I want to specifically call out here the special event service and promotion, something we're going to be speaking about momentarily, as well as the trip planning tools. We do see that there's room here to increase some of that awareness amongst folks who have familiarity or perceived familiarity with MTS, but might not know the extent to these services that they have the opportunity to use. Also, just a call out here also to the Youth Opportunity Pass, relatively newer, benchmarking here in this moment in time as to the awareness levels that do have room, of course, to be increased as well. So that's our baseline of our awareness, but what about our perceptions? We wanted to understand MTS not specifically also as a public institution, if you will, the brand of MTS, as well as perceptions of the actual services. So we'll start at the higher level. And we're going to be showing you this by those two segments we introduced, those folks who are non-riders, very infrequent, versus those that used to ride with us and don't necessarily do so now. So first being the non-riders, our scale here is that gray being, I don't know enough to say, which is fair for folks who don't necessarily use, all the way up to our darker green being very much so, that MTS as a public institution, as a brand, exhibits these traits. Right at the top here, ranked from the top to bottom, we see valuable as a key trait that's of perception here. Non-riders see MTS as a valuable San Diego public institution, and these are folks who aren't really even using it. We do see these are strong scores, I mean, relative to other industries as well that we've worked with. We're seeing a lot of green here. A lot of positive, whether that's moderate or very much so, for responsible, trustworthy, traditional. And if folks aren't necessarily, especially these non-riders aren't saying it's positive, they just really don't know enough to say, which is fair. Same chart I'm going to show you here, but for our former riders, those who used to work with, who used to be riding with MTS. Former riders view the MTS as positive with a similar ranking of top traits as non-riders. Again, valuable scores are very high here for those folks who used to ride with MTS. Similar rankings as well of responsible, trustworthy. We do see, you can see that gray has reduced for those former riders. Moderate increases here of those more neutral scores of a little bit of this trait. But overall, very much skewed to the positive ratings for the brand and as a public institution. So we'll show you a similar gradient here on these next couple of slides. And we wanted to talk specifically or get a rating from these respondents about service perceptions. So again, similar idea down all these different types of traits that we have. Yes, service specific, and also a little bit more broad as well. So adding little value all the way to valuable to San Diegans on the lower end of the spectrum being expensive versus affordable. We wanted to have a level of granularity here. So the 0 score being don't know enough to say, that gray, all the way up to 8, very much so exudes this trait. So again, looking first at our non-riders, we see a lot of green here, if you blur your eyes. We also see a lot of gray, so not really sure what to say for these particular traits. Non-riders believe MTS is a benefit to San Diego, as we did see, especially with the value to San Diegans. And even though they don't necessarily have as much experience, they assume it would be a positive experience. We see, just to call out specifics here, yes, of course, valuable to San Diegans, but affordable, accessible, key pillars of MTS. We see folks who aren't necessarily using it as much are still perceiving strong levels there. I do want to call out here as well, we'll get a little more detail on this. Lower at the bottom of the rankings here, we do see safe, unsafe versus safe, late versus on time, dirty versus clean. Yes, these are on the bottom end here, but we do see still more positive ends of the spectrum being more safe, on time, clean. And I want to, even though these are on the lower ends of this list, these aren't barriers. We have a specific item here where we'll discuss some of the barriers for these riders. So these were our non-riders, and then showing our former riders, people who used to ride with us but don't necessarily do so now. Again, we're seeing quite a bit of that green. Or perception, similar rankings as well, valuable to San Diegans at the top there, accessible, affordable. Similar trend as well where we see less of this gray. I don't know, they do have experience, but it does show an increase here in those moderate scores, that neutral, a little bit of negative scores there as well, but more in the neutral than in the positive. Okay, so getting specifically into those drivers and barriers, we wanted to understand, well, what are those things that are potentially drivers to use, motivations to want to use MTS for these folks who aren't necessarily using it as much right now, versus those barriers, why not? So first with our drivers, this light blue being those non-riders, darker blue being the former riders, we're seeing that MTS is helping us navigate San Diego, navigate a city, alleviates these challenges of commuting in a large city. It's an affordable and convenient option. Our top rated there, #1 reasons as to why we would use MTS over my primary form of transit. It helps us to avoid driving in traffic, avoiding those parking fees. It's more affordable than rideshare and helps us to minimize some of our vehicle costs. So these are some of our key drivers we're seeing. #1 reasons why some of these riders are, non-current riders would be interested in using transit. We'll see here on our next slide. So these are our drivers to ride. And then looking at some of our barriers. What is stopping us? Why do we avoid using MTS? We see top here for both of these types of riders, these independence is a top barrier for both of our non-current rider types. Preferring to be on my own schedule, routes do not go where I need to go personally. These are some of the reasons why folks are choosing other forms of transit. And we did mention earlier, I mean, really here at the bottom of the list is concerns about cleanliness or experiencing some type of negative social interaction. Those are very much lower on the list here. These aren't the #1 reason why folks are not using MTS. It is for a subsample here. We don't want to minimize that, but we also don't want to overemphasize these in any communication as to why we want to encourage ridership, and maybe bring those things to light to folks when it's not really a concern for them. We'll talk about a couple of optimal use cases. So we wanted to understand, well, is there something different about these non-current riders? Is there a reason? Where are they typically going? And then how can we compare that to where they see MTS as a good fit? How can we bridge the gap there? So we wanted to understand where are the frequent commutes, what are the types of frequent commutes that they're doing, and then where do they see MTS as a best situation or a best form of transit for those situations. And a big finding for us here was MTS is a great fit for infrequent scenarios, and it's a moderate fit for those more, quote, regular commutes, more frequent commutes. You'll notice here in this darker green, those types of commutes that folks are making at least a few times per week, running personal errands, going to work, personal leisure time are higher on there on the spectrum, versus things like events and going to the San Diego airport are less frequent. But you'll see that going to an event or going to the San Diego airport, these are top of mind scenarios for using MTS. So the idea here really being that maybe I'm not going to an event every day, maybe I'm not going to the airport every day, but every time I'm going to these places, I should be choosing MTS. With such a strong association for these respondents, it's really the idea here that we want to try to make that the top choice, even if and that is an opportunity for us to increase ridership amongst these folks. And just a note here too, we wanted to understand if timing or transfers was a barrier here. And we do see a window here between 21 to 30 minutes being an optimal time frame that this type of amount of a commute would be appropriate or fast enough for me to choose MTS over a primary form of transit, as well as one transfer, as well as something comfortable for these respondents to be able to choose MTS. We have just a couple points here and then we'll pass it back over to Stacy. But we wanted to just emphasize here, yes, independence versus control. This is a tough one. Obviously, it's about higher order personality traits, or we can't make everyone want to take the certain path if they have this idea of wanting to be on their own schedule. But we do challenge our marketing team here to really think about how we can speak about control of a situation versus MTS actually does provide quite a bit of independence for folks who need it. It's accessible and affordable. And how can we use, flip that perception to show that it does actually provide independence? We also, obviously, yes, core awareness of the key services of the trolley and the bus is very strong, even amongst folks who aren't using it, and that's very commendable. But then also being able to target some of the awareness around things like trip planning tools. How can we help those 50% who might not feel confident about using the bus or the trolley, or special event promotions? Again, encouraging those every time that we're going to a special event, we're choosing MTS. And then reassessment of those optimal use cases. We always are thinking about the commute, the work commute, the school commute as an optimal MTS decision, or choice to choose public transit for these riders. But maybe there are other opportunities there as well, like personal leisure time or those specific events, one-time events, where we start to think about MTS for those unscheduled, spontaneous moments. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Stacy.
Great, thanks so much, Jyoti. So the next part is, how do we plan to use this data? And so one of the things I wanted to start with was just where we have already been. So if you recall, last year we presented our Now Better Transit campaign, and really an effort to focus on the customer experience. And so some of those earlier efforts have focused on, safety. Some of the areas that we saw were lower on the perceptions: cleanliness, safety, efficiency, convenience. And so I think, we were on the right track, but we have opportunities to really step up that campaign and focus on maybe some of the more barrier part of things, the things that matter to people: efficiency, quickness, convenience, flexibility. So we have some opportunities looking ahead. Obviously got some good news about SB 125. And so pending the board's, direction for that extra service, more frequency, things like that can really drive down those barriers or perceptions that, you're going to have to wait 30 minutes or whatever it is. Also tap to pay. If I don't have to figure out how to download a transit pass, pay at a ticket machine, I can just grab my credit card that's already in my wallet or on my Apple Watch. So we do have some opportunities there. Not on the screen, but our team also did recently launch a new, it's called Transit Like a Pro. It's a easily digestible how-to series. So as we mentioned, 50 to 60% of people said they think they could figure it out, but that's still a large percent if you have, 1 out of every 2 people who isn't sure how to ride the trolley or bus. And so the first in that series was how to ride the trolley. We have our how to ride the bus coming out next month. One of the other points that really stuck out to us in terms of Pronto awareness: 60% of people had never heard of Pronto. And we've had that of non-riders. We've had that for 3 years. So one of the planned video series is how to pay, ways to pay, how to plan a trip. So a lot of these awareness pieces will be addressed with that Transit Like a Pro video series. And so we'll be tackling it that way. However, there's also new opportunities. Really those 2 kind of key audiences. Obviously, one of the things that was very clear from the research is special event audiences, people that are willing to try it, to take it to a special event or a special occasion. And that can be a great introduction to transit. If people have a positive experience on a one-time, they can come back and try it again without having to commit to buying a month pass. And so we'll be working with our marketing consultant, Neffer Smith Tucker, on a more comprehensive built out campaign, but really wanting to leverage the data to highlight ways to pay. Again, contactless payment, the mobile app, these really flexible options. Hopefully we'll see some service increases with SB 125 funding that, again, we can highlight, that trains or express buses come, once every 15 minutes. Again, also looking at strengthening partnership opportunities. So you can see the photo up there. We'll be participating in our second annual Pride event this weekend. We have partnerships that we've really built and developed and continue to expand with SDSU, the Padres. We're currently in discussions with San Diego FC as they get ready to launch their premier season, looking to reach out to the Wave. So how do we really partner with these organizations and institutions that are serving special event riders and continue to develop that portfolio? And we don't want to lose sight of the commuting population. So 15% from a research standpoint is very low. From a transit world, if you were to say you could get 15%, that would be insane to get 15% of the non-commuting population. So we don't necessarily want to lose sight of that, and it may just have to be more strategic. So it's not going to be a broad brush audience. And so I won't go over this too in depth, but what we did have is Stitch did look at, okay, well, of the people who did say that MTS is efficient, who is making those regular commutes and who's open to it. And so how do we create a profile of what that audience looks like so that we can reach out to those people who, even if it was a smaller subset, did say, hey, MTS is efficient. Hey, this is an ideal scenario. So we can still work with those people. And then we're still, we're working on it, but we also it caught our eye, the time that 21 to 30 minutes is an acceptable travel time and one transfer. And so that is not feasible for a lot of our system, but where is that feasible, And so trying to use some of the tools available in the market, looking at that to see, hey, where are those people and areas that are within 20 to 30 minutes and, one transfer or less, and reaching out to those people, I know my trip from Spring Street on the Orange Line, it's 27 minutes into downtown. So we know along the Orange Line corridor from La Mesa into downtown, that's within that travel time. And so how do we really use some, again, just really more specific and micro-targeted. So we'll be working on those strategies, building out more comprehensive campaigns in the coming months. And then one thing I did just want to mention is that this contract, we do have an option in 2026 to reconduct, do more market research. And so we can follow up on the specifics or expand that. But this is, the first of hopefully a second installment of this type of data. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Cars are one transfer preferred. Imagine that. You guys already felled the ladder today. If you have no perception of current riders, you'll never have perception of non-riders. I met countless people who told me they'd never ride because one stop was enough, they're done. Those who've never ridden scoff. They care about safety and efficiency just the same as current riders. And me going around to different city councils and informing people what MTS does or doesn't do hasn't helped MTS's image. Sorry, not sorry. Fix your system so I can promote it. People are only interested in special events downtown because of expensive parking. People are not interested in anything past that. But you want more riders? Fix all the issues that shouldn't even exist and then start working with cities to rebrand and promote it. Example, I told a council they should be promoting the trolley for their local events in their future hotel. MTS could be helping every city with promotion like it does for downtown. No one even thought about a trolley station promoting PB. And how about weekend specials to catch potential riders' attention? How about working with businesses along the lines to create special events? There's a free ride day, but no trolley foodie fest. Fusion food on the
Your
blue.
time has expired.
Eat,
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you very much, Clerk. Do we have any board discussion on this item? We'll begin with Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stott.
I will be very quick. I just want to say thank you so much for the way that you put the information together. Very positive and encouraging about the high positive perception of MTS and how important it is to our region. So that's really, really good. It shows that we have a lot of opportunity to increase ridership even more. I'll just stress frequency. It's super important, and the more rapid bus routes. It's like looking into that with our topography and, and the trajectory that we're headed to as far as decision-making and how much the public is willing to invest in our system. You may not get some of the things that, are we in a million years would dream of, but I think we can do more rapid bus routes. And so thank you so much. Also, just I will ask for another briefing offline just to see how what was neutral to negative, to see how we came up with some of like 25% of people that have read before feel it's unsafe, but that type of thing. But just generally speaking, it tells us a lot about some of the decisions that we'll be making in the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp. Yes, go
I
ahead.
was just saying, to address that, I meant to say that on the slide. So try to take a look at, similar to how our customer satisfaction is a more binary above and below the line. And so the neutral to negative was if you scored on an 8-point scale 4 or lower. So that was, our way of looking at the information.
Thank you both. Any other comment on this item? I too want to say that I thought this was very thoughtfully done and has produced some useful information. So thank you for all the work that went into this and for the presentation today. We are going to hold item 31 to our next meeting. It is a non-fair operating revenue report. Mark Olson is doing some great work in this area and has a good presentation for us. I don't want to rush it. So we will get this presentation at our next meeting. Item 32 is Chair, Board Member, and CEO Communications. And we'll check in with our CEO, Sharon Cooney.
Yes, thank you. Wanted to let you know that we launched open payments on Monday. We've already had 2,700 users of that in the first 3 days. The formal launch where we're really going to advertise it is actually going to be happening tomorrow, but and then we will also be including North County Transit District at that time, just in time for all the great events that the city's hosting, in the next couple of weeks. So I think it'll be very positive. Also wanted to mention to you, boardroom construction starts tomorrow. We're hopeful that we will get this all done in time for the meetings in September. If any of you are on the Budget Development Committee, we will be hosting that on the 9th floor instead of here. So all these will be gone, hopefully, the next time the board meets. Thank you.
Great news. Vice Chair Goebel.
Thank you, Chair. I just take 30 seconds to report. I did attend American Public Transportation Association Conference in San Jose over the weekend. We talked about issues in Washington, issues with bus procurement. Now that we're down to 2 manufacturers, Gillig and New Flyer, innovations, including autonomous shuttles and faster response to the public, safety and security, including something as novel as leaving an elevator door open until somebody wants to use it so that illegal activity doesn't happen behind closed doors. Interesting. Thank you.
Noted. All right. With that, we have a very brief closed session item. Before we break for that, do we have any public comment on the closed session item?
We do. Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello there. First, this anticipated litigation has 0 details. There's no case title listed and there's no case number listed. You guys could improve that. It just says 2 potential cases and lists 2 company names. The first being Shimmick Construction Company, Inc., based in Irvine, and the second being the Mott McDonald Group, based in London, England, in regards to the El Cajon third track project. Now, why would someone sue about that third track for the copper line? I wonder for which of the several reasons many people could be waiting in anticipation for litigation. There's definitely the harms to low income people, the dangerous tracks, the inadequate lighting, and outdated equity analysis, and the skipping out on the 12-month trial period to actually gather pros and cons. Could it be those potential federal violations that made a consultant want to back out and sue, or was it that maybe you guys were trying to run out on the bill for their expensive services? I understand that one. I mean, even though you got $138 million coming in. Well, you guys have a good day. That concludes all the comments today. Isn't that great? Almost 12 p.m. Pretty good. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. The next Board of Directors meeting is scheduled for September 12th at 9 o'clock in the morning. And at this time, we will move into closed session. Thank you.
Reporting out of closed session, agenda item number 35, closed session conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, subdivision D2 and D4 regarding two potential cases, Shimmick Construction Company and Mott McDonald and the El Cajon Third Track Project. The board received a report from legal counsel.
This meeting is now adjourned.